There we go. Bro, that's crazy. I hit go live and it was like, not today. Exactly. Exactly, dude. That was crazy. Oh man. And it looks like it didn't even kick it up to YouTube either. They were like, get that shit off this platform. All right, all right. I got another workaround then.
Right?
That's true.
Yeah.
Not in Trump's America. Oh
Does
shit.
anyone do anything right in Trump's America?
Well, I don't, I mean, we're gonna get into that.
Yeah.
Actually, we're gonna get into that. I'm bummed out though because they missed that cool America fuck yeah montage, so we're gonna have to end with that.
All right. Well, don't worry. Trust us, Google. We're gonna put it in there one way or another. So you might as well just end the fight now.
Yeah, just roll over like Democrats do. Just let it happen.
Just let it happen.
Just let it happen. No raid. Um. So why don't you? Let's try this again. Okay. So we used to do like recorded pilots for anybody that's not familiar with our content, and essentially what it was, we found there was so much going on and so fast last political cycle that we just couldn't keep up with it, especially with us working what 40, 50, sometimes 60-hour damn near weeks. So um, we switched to live streaming, the one true religion, and in order to prove that our faith is true and that our conversion is complete, we are going to do the first ever back to back stream for us. We're also brand new to live streaming, but there's so damn much to cover that happened just this last week, and even a couple of current events that are still unfolding as of yesterday.
Yeah, I mean the insane volatility of the American political landscape right now, even the like global political landscape, it's so heavily accelerated since Trump took office that if you're not constantly monitoring the ticker, you're gonna be left behind. So we
Yeah,
had to kind of change strategies a little bit.
for sure. Um, I know you just went through this, but since YouTube kicked us, I'll have you do it again. Can you kind of give everybody a quick summation of like who we are, how we met, why we're doing this?
Yeah, so I mean, we're really just two. Well, I don't know if normal people is really an apt description, but we're two kind of regular people that have a sort of an interest in politics and discussing politics. We met through personal lives, through working or what have you, and through just general conversations that we were having interpersonally. We decided, or we kind of recognized in each other that we had similar opinions about the breadth of the current political landscape, the issues that seem to plague it, and how those issues are reflected in media that covers politics as well. I think it was, like the two key sort of linchpins, so to speak, in our mutual chord that we struck were how we feel that it's a bipartisan issue in American politics where both parties are sort of interplaying with each other to create a negative sort of product for the average person, and that media, through sparking and creating and curating sort of more outrage reactionary culture when it comes to political discourse, especially making it more of a entertainment industry than anything else, is making it really hard for people to stay properly informed. It's punishing and condemning analysis and critical thinking and promoting emotional reactionary responses.
Gross. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why we kind of decided, like, hey, neither of us have really done this before, but should we just kind of throw ourselves into the mix and see if we can sort of find anybody that might listen to us or indulge us or maybe even feels the same way.
That's true. I couldn't have put it better myself, so I didn't. That's why you did it. You always do the openings. Eternally thankful for that. Uh, so much happened. Since we're basically doing damn near 5 hours of live stream content today, we might as well just tear off the band-aid, do the first half, and then we're gonna come back this evening, West Coast time, like what between 7 and 9. We'll
Yeah,
schedule it.
somewhere around there. Yeah.
So, all right. So let's do a quick recap from last week. Uh, there is something that I mentioned last week that I was hoping that you could um, clarify for me and the audience. You sent me an article on the kind of the misconception around Harris and the Joe Rogan rescheduling conflict.
Yeah, and I also actually realized that I had a bit of a verbal flub in the last episode as well. So I am going to clear the air a little bit on that. So what we were discussing in the previous live was sort of the controversy surrounding the fact that Harris, unlike Trump, did not go onto the Joe Rogan podcast, which a lot of people felt heavily damaged her reputation and her electability in the middle of a very tight race. And when it was mentioned on the last episode, it kind of clarified that maybe there was some context around it that not made it acceptable, but sort of better explained the whys behind that all came about. But since last week, I've actually gotten some new information that I think even adds more context to the issue. And the flub that I wanted to clarify for some people, because I think it also lends itself to the same context that we're talking about. I'm still stuck in forever mode that Joe Rogan is in California.
Oh yeah.
So on the last live, I think I said that she didn't want to go out of her way to California to record an episode, but he's in Texas.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and the reason that I think that that's significant is because Texas is a state that Kamala would have pretty much no business being in because it's not considered a swing state. So if you're hot on the campaign trail, generally as a candidate, you're not going to states that you know you're going to lose anyway. Now, I'm not saying that I still think that she shouldn't have gone on the show. I'm just saying if we're talking about it as California versus Texas, I think that's a massive, meaningful difference between the two.
For sure.
It also explains why it's so much easier for somebody like Trump and Vance to go because it's kind of a quote unquote safe space for them, ironically.
That is ironic. No, I agree. I still think that's a scathing indictment, like you brought up last week. I still think that's an indictment on her, her inner circle, her advisors, her political strategists. I think that's it. If they can't, again, if you can't, if you're not rhetorically gifted enough to be able to create a bulwark against misinformation or nonsense or even like lies, outright lies being told against you and your policies, I feel like you're already at a disadvantage. And then her not going there, regardless of whether she was going to win favor or anybody, it was a huge optical L, right?
Yeah, I agree. The only thing that I would add for clarification in the article that I sent to you shortly after we finished recording, NBC News actually did an article about this. Funny enough, how timed it was with our conversation. Evidently, there was some clarification added to that whole situation. Harris's deputy campaign manager, and this all apparently has been coming out in information that was a part of a book that recently released or is about to release about the election. The book is called Fight Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House by Jonathan Allen and Amy Parnes. It's a new book that they're releasing about the 2024 election, the dynamics of the DNC sort of switching their candidates late in the race and the battle between Trump, and especially covering its interplay with media and things like that. But as I was reading the article covering it, according to Rob Flaherty, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, which is Harris's deputy campaign manager, there's actually a detailed description of all of the effort they did try to put in to get her on the show, despite acknowledging that it was probably not something that would bolster her campaign very much, to the point where they had even actually flown her into Houston under the guise of she would be there to discuss some tangible political event, but it would be an excuse to get her into the state of Texas so that she could still go and talk to Rogan on his podcast. Now, some of those details, like negotiating the original meeting place, was up for debate. You know, originally there was pushback saying, you know, you need to come to Harris, not Harris come to you. Rogan stood firm against that. But the fact that there is proof that they actually did fly her into Houston. And then when she arrived in Houston, they essentially tried to kind of scramble and do a last minute confirmation of an interview, to which it was actually Rogan who said that it didn't align with his personal schedule. And so he declined that opportunity. And it was only days later that they announced that he was going to be doing a podcast with Trump. And when he reached back out to, or I guess I shouldn't say Rogan, because Rogan has his own team that handles those negotiations. When Rogan's team reached back out to the Harris administration, they said, listen, you get one trip to Texas within 3 weeks of the election, you don't get a second one. So I think it's just an important thing to add, because while I'm not going to sit here and admit that it was the overt effort and intention of the Harris administration and the campaign team to get her on the show, the fact that they actually were in live conversations and flew her into Houston, notified the podcast organization team that she was there and that they could do it, even on his terms, and he still denied it, kind of adds a little bit more of an indictment the other way. Whereas this was all previously understood that it was a one-way scathing indictment on Harris alone.
You are right. That's actually really important to know.
Yeah,
not that it
I'll make
matters
sure,
because it's game over, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, we'll make sure to put the full article in there, because I'm obviously skimming and summarizing a little bit. So I think getting to read the more direct quotes from her campaign manager and the full article that NBC did on it would be of a positive for a lot of people to get the full context. But I just really wanted it to be mentioned because we did spend some time discussing it last week. And, when presented with new, better information, one should always feel obligated to enlighten themselves and enlighten their audience. So
that's true. And that's why we're awesome, is we keep links in the descriptions. Once this is done, we upload it to the VOD, and you have the same access to resources that we do. So you'll know what we're talking about. Was there anything else that you wanted to bring up from last week?
There are some topics that I had mentioned at the end of last week's episode that I want to do a deeper dive into, but I believe per our preliminary discussions, we're going to save that for the evening show.
Okay.
Mostly because I wanted to make sure that we were clarifying anything from previous episode and then getting sort of like headline response out for the earlier show. So that way we could kind of recap the week, summarize, and then we can dive into deeper topics later.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, let's kind of go over an update from last week on MLK. Okay, so the MLK records are slated to be released. Trump signed an executive order releasing a bunch of information on the JFK assassination and the MLK assassination, as well as, I guess, there's going to be a bunch of stuff in there on MLK and his personal life, which somebody sent me some links. I found it very interesting. Did you want to add anything before I do like a straight up monologue?
No, I have nothing to add. I figured I'd let you take the reins on this one, and then anything would roll from there.
That's fair. So there's been, like, for a long time now, because I was looking into this, that for a long time now, there's been all kinds of quote unquote leaks about the MLK files. Like, he was an abuser. Obviously, he was big on infidelity. He was an alcoholic. And then I thought this was really interesting. One of the number one criticisms levied against him was that he was a communist, or he was affiliated with communist parties. So at that time, obviously, that was like one of the worst words you could use in the English language, right? We're coming out of the 50s into the 60s, so you still have some remnants of the Red Scare, right?
I honestly don't feel like the Red Scare has even ever
gone away.
Feels like we're still in it now. In fact, it's re-emboldened with the new Trump administration.
I gotcha. I mean, that's fair. I mean, that I can see that, especially with the AI conversation, which we're gonna have later on.
God.
Yes. So I found it interesting. I had made the prediction last week that they were going to either make up a bunch of stuff, or that they were gonna, like, quote unquote lose the files. I think that at this point, people should be prepared for all kinds of slanderous stuff to come out. Like the one thing I'm seeing tons of is that he was like a homosexual and he's like taking part in orgies and he was an alcoholic and a barbiturate addict. Um, Again, not that there's anything wrong with homosexuality or whatever, but like the look at that time. I can't remember if being homosexual was actually illegal at the time. It definitely wasn't legal to be married, but that's supposed to be a scathing indictment of him as a like a reverend, right? So his wife, Coretta Scott King, was vehemently and ardently against a lot of the allegations that were pushed about him at that time. She was saying like it was basically a career and well, not really a career, like a legacy assassination attempt um, to just slander his name. And I think that she's right. Uh, Most recently, his daughter, Bernice King, asked the Trump administration for a private viewing of the files before they release it to the public. They didn't outright tell her no, but they just didn't respond as far as at the time of this recording slash like live stream. So God only knows what's going to come from that.
Yeah, I had a question for you about this, and I'm gonna ask it, but if it sounds a little out of pocket, just let me know. But it was
Sure.
a thought that I had, and based on conversations we've had in the past, I thought I might ask it just to say. But from an outside perspective, kind of looking in, it almost seems like, because like the things that you just mentioned about all the things that he's accused of or potentially could be accused of, those things aren't going to sway how he's viewed by like average white liberal democratic people. In fact, in some ways, it's probably going to bolster his position with some Democrats. Of those specific accusations could be levied against him as almost like turning members of the black community against him. And it almost seems like that's more of a primary focus. And that's what makes it feel more insidious as somebody who is looking at it from sort of like a removed, not interpersonal perspective.
Oh
It
yeah.
seems like they're trying to smear him from within his own communities, and anytime that you kind of, if it did manifest that way, I think that that would really add much deeper layers to sort of the evil that's being permeated there.
I would agree. Although I feel like there's so many different cans of worms this opened, right?
No,
Like,
I know. That's why I was like, I'm hesitant to ask the question, but
no,
I
it's
feel like
good.
just for the sake of thought, it felt really like that was one of the things that kind of gut punched me out of nowhere, is like the potential for that being like an intentional thought and action that they put into play, and the fact that it, like what impact it would have is kind of part of those can of worms that you were discussing. So I'm not trying to necessarily open up too many side conversations or rabbit holes to go down.
Okay.
But does that observation or that assumption just seem like way too out of left field,
No, not
or
at
is
all.
that something that you've thought as well?
It's crossed my mind. I'll try and make this I'll try and like water this down and make it as simplistic as possible. Are you familiar with this program called COINTELPRO?
No, I'm actually not.
Okay, so COINTELPRO, they ran it from like the 50s, and I think it got decommissioned in like the late 60s. But like it's taken on all these various different forms, and it's essentially like a spy network that the FBI had created to work against activists, civil rights leaders, other groups that they viewed as like a threat to um, quote unquote like America or then the State Department, and all of the black like major black players, all the black leaders were targeted at the time. Like when Fred Hampton was assassinated, obviously that was like a direct result of that. You've got MLK who was monitored, followed, recorded, and then they'll create these documents and they'll falsify these documents, basically about like observable behaviors, but they'll never actually cite who the source of the information comes from. There was like a historic example of a white woman. I think her name was Jean Sayberg or something like that. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick.
Yeah, I'm
She say
looking
what?
it up right now, and just like kind of the scope of what they've targeted with it.
Oh yeah,
So
it's wild. So there was this really prominent actress at the time, and she was actually sympathetic to the Black Panther Party, and she was pregnant, and the FBI they went out of their way to basically wait for her pregnancy to come to a certain point in term, and then they could basically create these situational how do I put it? It's like they orchestrate inference into who the father was to ruin her in the eyes of the public as punishment for donating and being sympathetic to these black civil rights causes. And it ended up with her taking her own life much later on. Um, let's see here. Here we go. I'll switch the stream over. But the long and short of this, I'll show the audience like an example of what I'm talking about and how this works. But essentially, one, there's like this misconception that the black community is like vehemently homophobic, which it is not. There have been studies that show that that is actually not the case, and they're no more homophobic than anyone else. And actually, the COINTELPRO by the FBI, they got one of the things that ended up getting leaked about them is they turned the civil rights, the black community against the civil rights homosexual community, and they were trying to pit them against each other. So, to answer your question in a really roundabout way, without having tons of resources at my disposal immediately, yes, I think that that's totally possible, especially since like 2015. A lot of the conservative think tanks and even some Russia bots have been caught going into black spaces like online and trying to sow hyper conservative like talking points or trying to do social engineering against the black community. Like the black community has been disproportionately targeted by misinformation campaigns since forever. So
Yeah, and I want to clarify. I'm not my focus on this topic wasn't to imply that it would validate that that's what they assume would be a good way to smear MLK's legacy within the black community, because as you said, they've done studies on this and there's nothing that would tangibly confirm that it would have a like an extra potent effect versus other communities, but it's what they think would work.
exactly.
And the historical record shows that they've used these same smears and same tactics all across the board. And the reason that I started thinking about it and dwelling on it is because you take this story and this observation and you combine it with things like Trump's DOJ freezing all pending civil rights litigation and sending out memos saying that until further notice, the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice is not allowed to file any new complaints, any new amicus briefs, or any other court documents. And when you combine this with potential upcoming smear campaigns against prominent members of the civil rights movement, it just paints this picture that I think has to be highlighted, because I feel like these are a bunch of smaller quote unquote side stories that are getting diffused by rapid headlines and like larger headlines. So I feel like it's sort of being almost done intentionally behind the curtain and not so much in the forefront of people's mind. But this has absolutely broad scale damning implications for the black community and all ethnic minority communities with some of the actions that have been taken.
Yeah. I've got this up on screen. I want to read it real quick. And then after this, I actually have the COINTELPRO document and I'll show kind of like how it works. Just real tertiary, like a tertiary glance at it. So it says Seiberg died at the age of 40 in Paris. The French police ruling her death a probable suicide. Seiberg's second husband, Romain Gary, called a press conference shortly after her body was found, at which he blamed the FBI's campaign against Seiberg for her mental demise. Gary mentioned how the FBI planted false rumors in the media at Seiberg's pregnancy, or that Seiberg's pregnancy by Carlos Navarro in 1970 was by a Black Panther, and how the trauma had resulted in her overdosing on sleeping pills while pregnant, which ultimately killed her baby. And then she committed suicide later on. Says that she had attempted suicide on numerous anniversaries of her infant's death, but I guess she was successful on August 25th. So this is kind of what these look like. Like these declassified documents, they still have they're still redacted in some ways, but like here, let me zoom in. Counterintelligence program, black nationalists. They're labeled as a hate group. This is a racial intelligence on the Black Panther Party. This is 1970. Let's see. Here we go. Request the Bureau authority to forward a letter from a fictitious person to Hollywood, California. Gossip columnist to publicize that the pregnancy of Jean or John, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, Jean Seiberg was a well-known white movie actress by blank. It's redacted. Black Panther Party, and then redacted to possibly cause her embarrassment and tarnish her image with the general public. Information from redacted indicated that Seiberg was 4 months pregnant by redacted to protect the sensitive source of the information from possible compromise and to ensure the success of your plan. Bureau feels it would be better to wait approximately 2 additional months until Seiberg's pregnancy would be obvious to everyone. If deemed warranted, submit your recommendation at that time. So this is kind of like how these misinformation campaigns were at their inception back in the day. So yeah, I know this is a bit of a rant, but like I think that this is completely and utterly relevant to what we're going to see released about MLK here in the next like few weeks.
Yeah, I mean the fact that we're creating an established pattern, that this is relevant and, despite what folks want to say, fairly recent history in how the federal government falsifies information to create different opinions about prominent Black leaders to the American public. I think especially when combining it with this sort of rhetoric of retribution and dominance through aggressive manipulation that you're getting from the administration, from people like Patel, who's potentially now going to head the FBI. I think it's all incredibly important to kind of set the stage for this, because if we don't, and we're not actively paying attention to all these avenues, the fact that entire departments of the federal government are going to be closed or frozen pertaining to civil rights cases means that you're not going to hear the truthful counters to this otherwise. And once you get to that point, you're in incredibly dangerous territory.
Oh, yeah. And just to be clear, they didn't just do this against Black political leaders either. They did it against like Puerto Ricans. They did it against environmentalists. They did it against journalists. And I think...
Yeah, I mean, I think COINTEL's page shows that it was created to combat the American Communist Party.
And that's what they'll say, but...
Right. Yeah, that's the official phrasing that they use. And then it has like a list of groups that they use these tactics against.
Long story short, basically anyone that doesn't bend the knee. And I think you'll actually see a rise in these orchestrated intelligence networks again, especially with Tulsi going to be at the helm of a lot of this shit. And like you said, Kash Patel also. I think they will work in tandem to facilitate pitfalls in communications and basically ultimately incriminate people or set people up to take a fall. Like one of the things that COINTELPRO, I don't know if it mentioned on the page because you were looking at it. I'll leave a link to like a Wikipedia and some books that people can read about it. One of the things that they were known for is in trying to incite people to violence. So yeah, and like my bold prediction, I don't even think it's that bold of a prediction, is that while they wouldn't be bold enough to literally reopen under the same acronym, I think there's a high likelihood that a department of the federal government and the FBI will be reopened under some new name, some new acronym that essentially performs the same function. Hold on a second. There was an ACLU lawsuit in like 2020. Let me see if I can find it. And it's because the FBI was still surveying Black justice groups, social justice groups, and they were trying to label them as Black identity extremists. So I don't think it ever really went away. I think, like you said, they'll call it a different acronym or whatever. It's still very much in play, though. I just think that it had to settle to they put it on the back burner, but it's still in effect. The ACLU, here we go. Let me switch over. The ACLU tried to sue the government to release these. I think it was under the Freedom of Information Act, but instead they said we don't have to, and we've labeled you guys as black identity extremists. So I will leave a link to this as well. But
Yeah.
they never
Sorry,
they never got anywhere with their lawsuit, and it's really wild to me.
yeah.
So
Yeah, sorry. I know that's not what you were prepared to start with, but it's just a thought that crossed my mind. And
no, it's great. It leads right into stuff I was going to try and talk about anyway.
Yeah. Also, one last little side note. This is just like a personal little lash out here. Fuck the federal government for removing discussions and history of the Tuskegee Airmen.
True.
Speaking of what we could even indicate is like a reattempt at the erasure of Black legacy in America, especially positive legacy. That is one of the most scathing, horrific, like seemingly minimal things that they did. But I think that that's just atrocious.
It is. It's but I think it's indicative. I've been screaming into the void since before I knew you that there was eventually going to be an attempt to erase Black history, because they'll go, oh, it's American history. Like, why are we making people feel bad about it? Like that doesn't have any impact on you today. And it's like, well, people can still learn from it, right? Even if you believe that. But yeah. I mean, you had a publishing company. I'm sure we're going to talk about publishing companies later today on the second stream. There's a publishing company that got in a bunch of shit like in 2019 or 2020 because it changed a bunch of the textbooks, the history textbooks in a Texas school, that slavery happened because they were migrants that came here looking for work, and that the benevolent white plantation owners gave them jobs and food and housing. And that's how like we started doing immigration. Completely, absolutely unfounded, ridiculous, just lies. Absolutely disgusting. So I don't know if you'd heard of that.
I've heard of it, but it'd be disingenuous to say that I'd been following it. So
sorry, this is kind of like I'm like a one-trick pony, I guess, in certain ways, and this is one of my one tricks. Maybe I'm a two-trick pony, but it came out way later. Since you hadn't heard about it, it came out way later that publishing company had been purchased by what is now known as the Daughters of the Confederacy, which is a group that was responsible for like Gone with the Wind, Scarlet, all of those timeless pieces and like movies that people love so much. Those were written and by the Daughters of the Confederacy, and now they're trying to buy textbooks and history books and all these things to rewrite history to make the Confederacy seem less demonic, basically, and to whitewash history.
But it's liberals and Democrats that are overly obsessed with race, with everything, and conservatives don't even care about race.
Of course.
Yeah, obviously.
Merit. Bro.
Anyway. Yeah. Like I said, I know that's not how you were prepared to start, but I just couldn't escape the thought, and I hadn't been able to talk to anyone about it, and that's part of why we're here. So
true. I'm glad you brought it up, actually, because I'm sure there are people that have similar thoughts that maybe aren't Black. So I don't know. I love talking about this stuff. I think it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, we can circle back to what you actually wanted to start with, and I'll let you take it, because I've sort of derailed what our original plan was, if there was such a thing.
No, I mean, we kind of covered a lot just now. Going back to Bernice King, daughter of Martin Luther King Jr., she basically asked for a private viewing of the files before they're released. Like I'd said, there was no response, as far as I know, thus at the time of this live stream. So if there's an update, actually, it won't matter, because they're going to release it shortly. So I just wanted people to brace for impact, because I don't think anything good comes from this.
No, I think despite everything we're talking about, it was a foregone conclusion that it was going to be essentially a smear campaign from the beginning.
Yeah, and then it makes me wonder how it will be weaponized by think tanks or propagandists to be like, look at this, the civil rights was a sham. Like, you guys shouldn't even believe in this because these are your leaders.
Yeah, we should roll back interracial marriage.
Yeah, that is something people are worried about. I wasn't even going to go into that on this stream, but
Oh, yeah, sorry.
No, no, it's fine.
I'm just gonna put my tinfoil hat on, but to be honest, I think I can wear a regular hat and still land in the right place here.
It's got to be a MAGA hat, bro.
Oh God, yeah, nice custom one.
I'll let the cat out of the bag though, since we're talking about the repeal of potentially interracial marriage. You and I have also had a conversation, and we won't get into the details of what we're planning, but not bad, FBI, not bad. Okay, um, but you and I believe that they will most likely discuss repealing gay marriage before Pride, correct? As an antagonistic way to psychologically kind of terrorize the the queer community. Would you agree?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm almost like somehow 100% convinced with having no real basis for that belief, but it just feels like something that would happen.
Yeah, I think that they would be the types to either do it on an anniversary day, like the Stonewall protests, or to do it on like right before or right on like the start of Pride Month.
Yeah. I
So
think it would be like an even worse implication would be to do like a sort of a double jeopardy thing where they have two major decisions or at least proposals of decisions that affect different minority groups. So that way, instead of being able to show solidarity for each other in those moments, they actually pit them against each other. Because that's sort of the American legacy of modern government.
that's true. They are really good at that. I was thinking that what they would do is they would do that right before. You would obviously then something like Pride would turn into protests, right? Then they would use that as an excuse to double down, triple down, quadruple down on taking people's civil liberties away. Whether it's right to protest, whether it's like they will do what they did to the black community, where you had a bunch of people who will go in during protests and they will co-opt it, or they will go in and they will do like violence or riots, and then it will get blamed on like the gay community, like kind of like it got
Yeah.
blamed on the black community, and then they'll use that as a pretext for the next 5 to 10 years of propaganda against that
Yeah.
group.
Yeah, I think there'll be agent provocateurs on the ground at all these demonstrations, and I think like there's a pretty prominent theory going around the internet right now that part of the reason that we're being just bombarded with this sort of like fascist accelerationism is because they're trying to force the hand of citizens for violent demonstrations so that way they can then justify, like you said, justify a harsh militaristic response. There's people that are essentially convinced that the plan is to have martial law implemented within the next 6 to 7 months and to use evidence of violent demonstration as a means of justifying locking down elections to help secure further terms for Trump. I think some of those things are too far down the road to be at the focal point right now. Um,
Yeah, that comes later, I'm pretty sure.
yeah, that comes later. I think it's harmful to be too focused on 3.5 years from now because there's so much shit happening today. But I think the theory has at least some pretty valid basis.
Well, God bless her heart, Bernice King, she made a like a press release, and she released it on, I think it was X or Twitter, and she was basically like, hey, don't, when all these things start popping up, don't lose sight of what my father was trying to get you guys to realize, which is they're trying to bait you into performing a certain action. Don't do the action, and just like stay focused on love, community, and like synergizing communication amongst each other. And I think that that's great that she was I don't know, farsighted enough to see that, and instead of short-sighted, like fuck these people, let's do what they're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but that's what I agree with you. That's what it feels like. It feels like they're trying to provoke people to a response. And
Absolutely.
and just to tie off, I guess to kind of wrap up the MLK stuff, I do see a lot of black people. Well, I won't say a lot of black people. There's black people in certain spaces online who say Martin Luther King Jr. was a coon, or that he was obstructionist, or he was like a sellout. And I despise hearing stuff like that, because I think it's such a hallmark of like ignorance or not knowing your history. Because like there was, if you read any of his stuff, he wasn't like a pacifist, but he also knew at that time that the army was looking for a reason to just killed a lot of the protesters. So he chose peaceful protest as a strategy. It's not that he was like, oh, don't hurt anybody. It's that he said these things are contextual. And it just frustrates me to no end when I hear people say, oh, he should have been more like Malcolm. Like, I have a lot of love for Malcolm, but like the things they were fighting for, although they were shared, they had different approaches based on different situations that they found themselves in. So I hope people don't forget that.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that you can do to destabilize movements is to make it so that way that movement has to conform to one specific ideal manifestation. Because I'm even seeing it now in discourse that's happening amongst people trying to organize for legal protests, nonviolent protests across the country right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many people that are in these discussions trying to basically diminish and defeat any attempted organization because it doesn't meet some grandiose standard of a higher level of demonstration. And it's like, well, if we can only demonstrate in one perfectly idealized way, then you're never actually going to bring people together, and that's the most important part, is at least the beginning of that.
Yeah, I think you're on the nose. But how much of that do you think is, organized opposition trying to get people to be like, oh, it's not enough, we need to do more? Because that seems like it's like breadcrumbs. How much is
such
more?
such a substantial percentage of that, I would say, like probably well over 50%.
Did you ever watch Judas and the Black Messiah?
No, I've been telling myself to watch it because I'm meeting more and more people that have been reaffirming my decision to finally watch it, and I just haven't done it yet.
You're not woke enough. Okay.
True.
I'm just kidding. So there's a scene where the Judas character, shall we say, was tasked with trying to get Fred Hampton to do direct action in a negative way. And the way he does it is they're going to do a protest at a certain landmark, and he literally shows up with C4 in his trunk. And he's like, bro, we got to do this now. We got to do it this way. Fred Hampton's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Get rid of that shit now before some cop sees this shit in the trunk and uses it as an excuse to take all of us to fucking prison. So I think that when I hear you like tell me about some of these demonstrations and people online are like, oh, well, we need to do more. We need to do more. We need to do more. That's not enough. That's what it makes me think of. It makes me think that they're breadcrumbing up to trying to get someone to do like direct action in a really bad way. Which also hurts the movement when you do stupid shit like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's I forget what the term is, but it's a known thing in the nomenclature that this is always a part of solidarity and sort of quote unquote revolutionary movements. There's always people that embed themselves into it to try to destabilize.
Yep. Well, that was a nice little warm up. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I think that we covered kind of a nuance and some history that maybe the average person doesn't know. So I'm always thankful that someone like you knows these things and is willing to have these conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know like the like COINTELPRO. I knew that the FBI, especially during Hoover's administration, was laden with corrupt observations and dirty tactics over minority rights groups, but I didn't know the specifics. So I actually was able to be enlightened a little bit myself.
Very cool. Do you want to transition into ICE raids? Because that shit has been popping off. Or did you want to talk about something else first?
I mean, I think we could definitely talk about it because I think that's one of the few things that I think has been pushed sort of to the. I'm trying to find the best way to describe it without sounding like I'm diminishing its validity, but it's almost at the emotional forefront of the administration so far. I think. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
What do you mean by at the emotional forefront?
Like, it's the thing that's most emotionally pressing on people right now is seeing all the stories about deportations, especially now with this horrific story coming out that we were signing executive orders to put 30,000 migrants in Guantanamo Bay to hold them indefinitely while they're being processed, which has just been explained in the most loose and evasive language I can possibly think of. But I think it's the thing that's getting the most guttural reaction from citizens is seeing the stories of deportations. So that's what I mean by saying that it's at the sort of the emotional front of this administration so far.
Yeah, I'll hand it off to you. You can get it started. And
Yeah, I mean it's so, for anyone who's unfamiliar, I mean I think we're all at least somewhat familiar at this point because one of the biggest foundations, probably the largest foundation of Trump's campaigning for the 2024 election was the national crisis that we had on the southern border. It was all about getting illegal immigrants out of the country. We heard all of the horrible stories about the different, as he coined it, Biden migrant crime, which was a phrase that he sort of invented halfway through the campaign to harp on all these specific incidents that were occurring because of the immigration issue. And as he said, day one of his first executive orders was going to be to do mass deportations through executive order, and that's exactly what's been happening. But there are some things that I think, really need to be discussed about it. But one of the worst and most horrifying elements to it is, unsurprisingly, to those who detest Donald Trump and see him for what he is, knew that it was going to manifest in this overly sweeping, just completely racially based and not evidence-based approach to deportation. I mean, I've been reading stories, and you probably have some that you've read that I haven't even seen, but stories talking about how somehow even members of the Navajo are being detained because they're suspected illegal immigrants.
Not just them, also Puerto Ricans and biracial people, funny enough.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm seeing stories about how ICE is trying to gain access to public schools. So in the middle of your school day, whether it be you could be in second grade, you could be in middle school, you could be in high school, ICE agents are coming into these institutions without a warrant, without any forewarning, and they're demanding access to certain students of these institutions for supposed detainment or deportation. And it's amazing. You're seeing waves of it occurring all over the country, and you're seeing all these reactions from these different politicians. I think the most egregious, or one of the most frightening elements to it, was Trump trying to eliminate citizenship through naturalization, which thankfully has been blocked by multiple judges across the country. I think the last time that I saw a number, it was 18 at the time, but that was kind of within a few days of that executive order being put through. So I'll have to double check if that number's increased. But the fact that it was even proposed has massively negative implications. And the fact that it's turned into the same toxic conversation back and forth of, how could the people that are, MAGA supporters or conservatives, Republicans, they're oversimplifying it by saying, how could anyone have a contention with criminals being taken out of their country? Well, because as we've demonstrated, and as has already been demonstrated, they're rounding up people that just simply look the part, whatever that means. They don't actually use these tangible reasons to get them out of the country. Sure, some of them are being evaluated by an aloof estimate of their criminal history or criminal record, but that's a small percentage of them. In fact, I was just reading something earlier today that not only is the number of deportations per week lower than it was a few months ago under the Biden administration. I think it's like they're averaging 7,500 a week, whereas Biden at one point was averaging 15,000 a week. I'll have to verify those numbers, but this is just what I was seeing. But also the percentage of those deportees that are convicted criminals is 50%, down from 75% under the Biden administration. So not only are we not addressing the issue as sweepingly as we originally thought, but we're also not addressing it in the way that we said that we were going to address it. And the fact that it's anyone who is suspected or accused of a crime means that we've just completely devolved into like McCarthyism, Red Scare witch hunting, where you can just call in somebody who looks, quote unquote, like an illegal alien criminal, and somebody in a black SUV will come in and sweep them up. And for some reason, that's a totally justifiable response to large numbers of immigration.
Very interesting. I had heard, I didn't hear those numbers provided. I actually heard that Trump's deportations, I guess it would be arrests, not deportations. I guess it depends on how we're splicing the numbers. I'm curious what Biden's detainment numbers were, because you said his deportation numbers, right?
Yeah, and again, I'll have to verify those, and once I do, we'll make sure that it's all cited, so that way we can back it up with tangible information. But the information exchange was that he was deporting roughly 15,000 per week at the peak of his administration, and Trump is currently averaging 7,500, so half, per week.
Well, it's been the first week, right? So I'm curious how it will be after a month, because I had read, I think Newsweek had said that they were doing 1,000 arrests a day, and they were doing like 800 detainments a day.
Yeah, so, well, and that doesn't surprise me, because again, I think you're going to see a huge difference between the amount of people that they're rounding up and the amount of people that are actually being deported. But the fact that the people in the middle are going to be detained for indefinite time periods, or like they just announced, 30,000 of them being sent to Guantanamo Bay of all places.
Yeah, that's insane.
If you don't know what that place is, do yourself a favor and look it up. We can give you some rudimentary starting grounds here, but it's a black site torture facility that we use to torture, okay, let's just say it for what it is, essentially, primarily brown people post 9/11. It's what we've been using to torture political prisoners, essentially. And that's now where we're going to put refugees, because they're illegal immigrants. We're going to put them in the same place that we would put suspected terrorists, because it's all being... What's up?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, because it's all being lumped under the same umbrella. We're getting to a point now where the president of the most powerful nation in the world is not even slowly tiptoeing into rhetoric that would equate all illegal immigration with potential terrorism.
Yeah, it's so insane, dude. I saw something that said that there were still 12 people being held in Guantanamo, and that had been carryover or left over from like the Iraq War and stuff. And a lot of, just to be clear, these were not like quote unquote resistance fighters or anything. A lot of those people had not been charged with any crimes. So they were just held on suspicion, which is already a dangerous precedent. That's why, like, I remember liberals at the time were calling Dick Cheney, who like signed the order to interrogate them and stuff. They were calling him Darth Cheney because he was like just out of pocket with the interrogation techniques and stuff in Guantanamo.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it's a site that is not owned at all by the U.S. government, it's basically leased from Cuba, a country that we supposedly have a long, terrible history as adversaries with. Somehow we lease a plot of their land to torture all of our political prisoners, even if they're not really guilty or remotely accused of any wrongdoing. And that's where we're about to put potentially 30,000 people indefinitely until we can figure out what to do with them. And to expand upon that, the fact that there is also an executive plan to, or at least throwing around a plan to then forcibly deport domestic criminals into foreign countries for being repeat offenders means I'm
so glad you brought that up.
Yeah, because that's the, I think that's the finalized endgame dystopian vision that was, since it hasn't been signed into order, people aren't harping on it enough. But our president just proposed the idea that we may eventually sign an executive piece of legislation or executive order that would allow the federal government to forcibly deport repeat, supposedly only violent criminals, although I've seen conflicting rhetoric around it, to foreign countries where they would be, quote, managed by other people in different plots of land around the world. Now,
We're
I don't
doing
know
slavery again. Let's fucking
Literally.
go, dude.
Yeah, we're going to take Greenland by force, and then we're going to send prisoners there to dig up rare earth minerals. And for anyone that thinks that that is a ridiculous overstretch, I don't think you've read enough history, to be honest.
And here's the thing. So here, let me switch over. But let's like look at this stuff in totality, right? Because someone might be like, oh, well, I don't want rapists and murderers in my country. Like, let's get rid of them, right? And I would say, cool. So you're running on a platform where you said they're doing this to us. You said that they're like emptying their prisons, emptying their asylums, emptying all these undesirable individuals into the country, right? So you needed to run on this draconian platform to get rid of all of them to protect Americans. That's what he ran on, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's already talked about denaturalizing citizens. He's talked about creating like blanket criminal acts. Like in some southern states, it's like, I don't know, illegal to protest now. So you've got that. Now you've got the concept of quote unquote repeat offenders and criminals being sent to other countries to be managed, as you said, maybe on a plot of land, maybe picking cotton. We don't know, right? But I imagine what happens if you have like an activist get arrested multiple times. Are they now a repeat criminal? Are they a repeat offender and now they need to go to, I don't know, somewhere in the middle of buttfuck nowhere to be managed? Like what happens if you have a journalist who maybe Trump doesn't like or the administration doesn't like because of what they're reporting on? Like, I think this is a super dangerous precedent.
Yeah, especially when you connect the dots of, well, first of all, the criminal justice system, I don't know if anyone's aware, tends to disproportionately target certain demographics and percentages of the population in the U.S. other than, others. Despite the obvious rates of violence committed by white people, they are not the ones that would be towards the front of the line for forced deportation through criminal offenses, especially repeat criminal offenses. Everything that we've built in the criminal justice system has been around keeping minority groups in prison for as long as possible. The other thing that I find interesting about this is that we're kicking around this idea of forcibly deporting them to other countries, even though on the day before that, like on his first day of the presidency, one of his executive orders is about fully unleashing capital punishment. Well, okay, so do you want to kill them or do you want to forcibly deport them? The fact that you led with we want to kill them and we want to encourage them being killed, and now you're saying it's almost like a light bulb went on in his head and he thought, oh, you know what would be better is to deport them and force them into labor situations. And like you were saying about journalism and activists and them being conflated with terrorists, there has been a direct, tangible, one-to-one sort of connection where the administration and especially the GOP has been pushing for new legislation to be passed that would equate anyone who has shown sympathy to Palestinians be labeled as terrorists, potential terrorists, any NGOs that have supported Palestine. In fact, this was just reaffirmed, I think, earlier today or yesterday. I'll have to find the exact information. But that NGOs would be labeled as, totally frozen out of federal funding or any funding at all if they had been proven to be remotely attached to Palestinian solidarity or support. Are those people going to be forced out of the country too? Like, is that who Trump is asking Jordan and Egypt to? Are they cleansing out Palestine and the West Bank so that way they can fill it with people that they don't want in the U.S. anymore? Like, there's all kinds of reasonable, some of them more far-reaching than others, but reasonable deductions and potential scenarios. None of them are something that you should even remotely stand for or mildly support.
Last week, he was literally asking if Malaysia would take Palestinian refugees and stuff. So who fucking knows, bro? Who knows what's on the horizon?
Yeah, and then especially now when you have, to kind of circle back to the original conversation of who was supposedly the primary targets for these deportations, he's now using it as economic leverage. He's shaking down Central American countries and South American countries for their responses to these deportees. So, like, the most prominent example being the complete neutering of Colombian government in response to taking deportees back. So you had this immediate response, which kind of swept news articles briefly, where Trump tries to push. I forget what the number was, but there was a couple hundred at least illegal immigrants supposedly that were being put on a plane and sent back to Colombia. The Colombian government released a statement where they were not only going to refuse these people, but they were basically telling Trump, I think it was the president, said directly in a response that he was willing to be completely bullied or even killed for his refusal to the Trump administration. Okay, great. We have one of the first major signs of resistance. Okay, well, within 2 hours of that statement, there was a full 180, a complete reversal of that intent. And not only are they taking all those people, but now there's stories coming out saying that this could create shockwave effects through the Colombian government. This could affect their, Colombia's a part of a $40 billion green plan to rehash their country for more environmentally friendly policy and infrastructure. The US and Trump are basically considered totally gone from that plan. So now they have to have a whole new foundation built for these initiatives that they have. It's almost like people have been saying for decades that the main reason that Central American and South American countries are an issue in terms of immigration is because the US has had an active role in making those countries terrible places to exist.
Yeah, we've been destabilizing them.
Yeah, and the fact that we're just doing it, we're doing it blatantly now. We're going to force feed you immigrants back to your country, but at the same time, we're also going to punish you with tariffs, and we're going to starve out your country's economies if you do not kowtow to our new president and our new supreme ruler. I mean, I guess, like I've been saying before, I guess the only silver lining that you could have from that is that it's finally unmasked. And it's obvious, but the fact that it's not being seen that way by too much of a percentage of the American population is just not only infuriating, but just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, what a disappointment, truly. Because I read the guy's post, the Colombian president's post, and that dude should have been a theater kid. I mean, he was talking about overcoming and enduring torture and how he was willing to basically plunge his country into hardship because that's like who they are at their core, is they're resilient. And like, rumor has it that the Mexican president was like, I got you, and she's like offering to hold him down as long as they like stay consistent. And then, like you said, within two hours or 4 hours or whatever, 2 hours I think it was, dude rolled over, showed his belly. And here's the thing that also pisses me off, which I guess I'm gonna be shitting on liberals a lot today. I fucking hate liberals so goddamn much because they were sweeping. They're like, well, here's the thing. He never actually said he wouldn't take them, okay? So let's not, shit on the president. Like, he did good. We love this post. We love the optics, okay? Like, that's all that matters, is the veneer of resistance, not actually doing anything. He just didn't want to take them via military aircraft. So cut the guy a break. It's like, I fucking hate you guys. Like, yeah. you're so worried about the wrong things. It's beyond me, dude.
The president of the United States basically just came in like an old Italian mobster with a baseball bat, broke down his kneecaps, destroyed half of his installations, and then said, you need to pay me insurance, otherwise something terrible may happen to your entire nation. Let's also not forget that at the same time that we're pressuring tariffs on the Mexican government for not receiving immigrants, we're also openly telling them that we're about to come down and wage literal war and military action against the cartels. You can say whatever you want about the fact that the cartels are bad and that they need to be gotten rid of. I'm not arguing with that. But do you understand the effect that that's going to have on that entire nation? So we're not only are we making them choke on everything that we want to have done against them, but then we're also going to follow it up with full, potentially, allegedly, full-scale military involvement and special forces involvement in the country of Mexico for an indeterminate amount of time.
Yeah, it will be an occupation. That's how it would have to end.
Exactly. It's a shakedown. We're doing it through our entire continent right now. We're trying to shake down and intimidate all of our allies, all people that global trade relies on. I don't give a fuck how plentiful natural resources are in the United States. We have built everything that we have based on global trade. Now, whether or not we've attained that global trade through fair deals and morally upstanding practices, totally separate discussion. And trust me, there's only one answer. But the fact that we're now in an administration that thinks that we can have our cake and eat it too through direct threats of violence and economic violence, I just don't see how this is something that you can either A, explicitly support, or B, be silent about or not be sure about its implications for our future.
You want to hear a hot take?
Always.
I hope to God I'm wrong on this. But like between the Red Scare 3.0, fear mongering about China, what with the Russian-Ukraine situation, which Trump said he would fix day one, and then now they're talking 6 months out. What with we've got these anti-DEI, anti-naturalization, immigrant roundup and deportation groups. We've got a complete strong arm of the infrastructure and the mechanisms of power within government. God, I sound like a fucking socialist when I say that, but that's what it is. That's what they've done. They've co-opted the government. And then you've got the ineffectiveness and just the, I guess, lackadaisical nature of like liberals. Now you couple that with dog shit foreign policy, which we've always kind of gotten by on like foreign destabilization, but now we're doing like foreign annexing. Okay. You've also got like this huge push to access Alaska and then steal bodies of water, which is like a new thing I was going to talk about maybe on the second stream. They're wanting to have like Nestle and other companies who already have like this fucking grasp, this like, I don't know how to put it, this stranglehold over like natural water supplies. Basically they want the government to work with them on quote unquote regulating the amount of water and the type of water and where it goes, right? It feels like with the grab for natural resources, especially, that we're gearing up for war. That's what it feels like. They're crushing dissent in the country. We're like you said, shaking down the entire North American continent. We're getting people out who are different or who might have different like sympathies toward like outside groups. Like I don't know what else to like make of it.
That and you have the only unfortunate thing about your and I's dynamic is that every time we have come to each other with a hot take, we have both responded with, "Oh yeah, no, I assumed that was the case."
That's true.
Unfortunately, your and I's brains, at least when it comes to this kind of stuff, work in tandem a lot of the times. Not on everything, but on most things. Especially when it comes to broader scale implications. So I'm going to add a few more considerations that would go along with what you're saying.
Let's do it.
First of all, we're trying to push the entire global south off of the ledge. If you want to think of it as them grasping at us for an arm to reach down and get them off of the cliff that they're hanging off of, and we're actively taking a 2x4 and pushing it into their face and saying, no, not only will I not help you, but I actually want you to stay out. Trump wants to build an Israel-style Iron Dome around the country.
That's true. I forgot about that.
Not only does he want Greenland for its natural resources, but he wants it for military installation for critical defense infrastructure. He wants to forcibly take military control and dominance over the Panama Canal, specifically because he cited how it's used by the Chinese government. No other government, by the way, just the Chinese government. And the fact that we just handed a huge potential agreement between, I sent this article to you, but I'm scrambling now trying to find it. We handed the keys to national defense infrastructure to OpenAI in order to help bolster using their AI interface, specifically helping us allocate more resources pertaining to nuclear armament and nuclear energy. and defense against the same type of energy. Let me see if
don't forget Taiwan, how he wants to undo the CHIPS Act and basically say we're building all this shit ourselves and we're going to leave Taiwan out in the cold.
Yeah, so Trump in the last even today, I'm refreshing news feeds today. He's announced that we're going to place a full blanket tariff on all silicon chips. We're going to put blanket tariffs on steel, aluminum, and copper. So what he's doing is he's completely shaking down everything involving global trade in the global markets through tariffs to justify completely ripping up the entire floorboards of the United States to turn it into basically a bomb shelter. We're turning the whole country into a bomb shelter for white people specifically.
Jesus
I know
Christ.
that's like the last little bit of it that I'm gonna lose people on. But when you consider the people that we're telling have to get out of the country, we're saying we don't care about civil rights. We are actively fighting against immigration and DEI policies, which DEI just means minority. So we're actively trying to push all of these things out of here. We're trying to completely revamp the federal government from a top-down perspective, so that way they are all aligned with a singular vision, and the entire federal government is being bribed essentially to leave the federal government positions all through civil service and higher levels of the federal government. They're being bribed with up to 8 months of severance pay with full benefits to completely clean house and reinstall everything else. There's a news story that just hit before we started recording, or as we started recording, that there are federal government employees that are reporting that they cannot access their work computers, and that Elon Musk and Doge are potentially responsible for remotely locking out their access to their work computers.
Yeah.
And so if this doesn't scream, we're putting fucking 2x4s and plywood on the windows, I don't know what else does.
Also, don't expect those people to get their full pay at all, if paid at all.
Yeah, he wants to clean out the FBI. He wants to put tariffs on literally everything that we import in this country. Everything. And this is supposedly all within the guise of, or all within the guidelines of empowering Americans somehow.
I love how the conversation around inflation went away entirely. And we're going to talk about that on the second stream later tonight. But this shit pisses me off where, like, you know, I hear everyone screaming and crying and pissing and shitting themselves over how expensive things are, right? But then when Trump's talking about tariffs, it's good for America. We're going to let him do what he needs to do, right?
Yeah.
Austerity measures, fuck it. Like, we're going to tax the fuck out of you and we're going to make everything more expensive. But, you know, in the long term, even though I'm paying $4,700 more a month or a year in taxes, in the long term, it'll be worth it.
Yeah, well, it's because he's doing a great job of just demonstrating to his constituency that, no, I promise this is of immediate benefit to me, but it's long-term benefit to you. You just have to be willing to be the one taking the brunt of the negative consequences for my decisions. So when I say that I want to get rid of the IRS, or there's a new one now where they're proposing eliminating estate taxes. Who the fuck is that benefiting that voted for Donald Trump? Absolutely fucking nobody.
Yeah,
none of you.
They're getting capital gains tax down as close to zero as possible.
They're literally,
dude, it's wild, bro.
They're ripping up the country and the world for themselves. It's the same thing that people have been screaming into the void for years now, decades, centuries. It is nothing more than rich and powerful people are accelerating to the end game. We are in the end game now.
All the Illuminati and global depopulation folks are patting themselves on the back right now. They're like, I was right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they are. But surprisingly, it's not being done through malaria medicine or vaccines. It's being done through just blatant and overt fascism.
Actually, we don't know that. Okay, RFK has to get into a position of power, and then he'll tell us. Okay.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Real quick, shout out to Arias. Thank you, Arias, for joining us. I appreciate the comment. Any engagement is good for us. Like and subscribe because we're on YouTube, and then next week the goal is to be on Twitch as well. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we definitely want to get as many people in as we can. We want to have these conversations in real time. That's the main reason why
Oh
we
my
switched
God.
to this platform.
I'm so excited for the retards. I'm so excited for the dipshits to be like, you guys are woke, or you guys are dumb, or
Well, don't
Trump
worry,
is saving America.
you won't get any woke people with dropping the R word there. So you just totally.
Oh
you
yeah,
totally,
dude, I guaranteed it.
Yep, you ripped
Aiden
it
Ross,
open.
here we come.
Oh,
Kick
God.
streams, bro.
Yeah, Twitch is already sending an email drafting that we are not allowed on their
That's
platform.
not true. That's not true. We'll be Prime members. We'll sign up on Amazon, and Jeff Bezos will give us a pass.
Oh
Okay.
my God.
It'll
Yeah,
be
we'll
great.
join the coalition of tech bros that are all joining the
Oh my
fascist
God.
coalition.
Yeah, dude. Well,
Don't worry. Tonight I'm gonna unveil my my conspiracy to the world, but we're gonna have to save it for later.
Yeah, that'll be the best thing to end on ever. To kind of like we went real broad with it, but to kind of bring it back to like one section more myopically about like immigration and deportation and stuff like that. There was a lot of Trump's like Latinos for Trump that are feeling real betrayed right now. And there was actually, funny enough, I have two stories for you. One of them is about a conservative that I work with who is not he's like a Trump libertarian conservative. So he's like already just
Disgusting.
insane. But it,
but you just said two words together that make me physically ill.
True. I mean, I hate libertarians more than anything, but that's a whole separate rant.
You hate freedom?
Yeah. But he came into work and was telling me about how he feels like violated because he's disabled, so he only works X amount of hours per week, right? But the DEI stuff, when they were starting to abolish it, they tacked disability on top of that. Or I'm sorry, accessibility. So it's DEIA, and a lot of his stuff is under review for being axed. So the amount of money that he gets for what is it called? It's like a stipend that he gets for food and for housing. That's getting cut in half. And he's like, what the fuck? I voted for him, and I don't know why he would do this. And then you sent me that tweet about the guy who was moving, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was you, right? That sent that to me about the guy who they had packed up their house and they were moving, and like her job got frozen or was under review for. She was a nurse, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he's like a big Trump guy. So I don't know. I see like a lot of these people starting to kind of regret, or they're starting to feel like maybe they're a frog in the pot.
And let me just say, because this is a big argument that I've been getting into different message boards, forums, chats, whatever you want to call it, all over the internet. This will not be, at least from me, this will not be a platform to gloat or to try to tear down people who are having those revelations. While I could sit here and say that I wish that you had heard us in real time when we were saying that these things could or probably would happen if he was elected, just know that there's a spot for you next to me in any sort of potential resistance or reform that may come from this.
Oh man, I wish you hadn't done the high ground. That's fine. We'll be good people. I was gonna say that's not true. I'm gonna tear the fuck out of some of these people. But
that's why I said at least for me.
No. You're right. You're right. You are right. Because like nothing will get done otherwise, and it will be in perpetuity of just gang politics, basically.
The only reason that I say that way is because of all of the conversations you have had where we have openly admitted that the American public has been intentionally undereducated and misled to have these realizations on their own. So the fact that there's a small percentage of the population that can have those realizations and have these thoughts, my brain is constantly running over, like redlining with different just crazy thoughts about this stuff. I don't expect people on the average to have their brain functioning that way 24/7. And it's sometimes not a positive thing. So I just want to make sure that people don't feel like if they made that choice and they are genuinely now seeing and coming to the realization that those were the wrong choices, there are places for you where you can make a difference now.
That is fair. That's a fair statement. I almost made a wisecrack about the MLK stuff when you said redlining, but I decided it's probably best I engage.
Yeah. That being said, if you're somebody that's entrenching in the conversation about immigration or anything by saying like, why don't you want criminals out of your no, you don't have a spot next to me. You can go fuck yourself.
I think this is like a great way to kind of create a delineation between the guy that came to me at work and said, I'm feeling betrayed, right? They're cutting my funding, versus this other guy that I'm going to tell you about. Okay. So, all right, we'll call him Josiah. That's not his name, but we'll call him that. Okay. And what's unique about him is, he has like he's like a political nihilist, I guess. We were talking about like deportations and stuff like that, and like the Puerto Rican vet that got detained, and how they were like, we don't believe that these are real military IDs and credentials, so come with us. You're getting locked up for 24 hours or whatever it was, right? And when I'm talking to him about this, he basically is like, people are too alarmist, and this isn't that big a deal. And I honestly don't care about like these people's problems. They're artificially inflating the workforce. They're artificially inflating the housing market. I say, get them out. Fuck them. And I was like, oh, that's super crazy. Because you, dude, you literally look like someone that would, an ICE person would fucking detain. And he's like, I'm an American citizen. I was like, my dude, do you think that matters if they're doing like sweeping detainments? Because make no mistake, it's a dragnet operation. It's not we're specifically looking for Carlos, who is a criminal. It's, hey, where's your papers? Oh, you don't have papers? You can't prove you're an American citizen? I guess you're coming with us so we can verify. And we're going to hold you indefinitely until we verify, right? And his response to me was mind-blowing. He said, I'm perfectly fine with that. Those are his exact. He said, I'm perfectly fine with that. I've spent my life being basically detained and over-policed, so them locking me up for 24 or 48 hours or even a week makes no difference to me, as long as they get these fucking migrants out of the country.
Oh my god.
And migrant wasn't the word used, by the way.
Yeah, the perfect American has been created. Somebody that is just a homer for everything that the U.S. does, good or bad.
Here's what's wild, is this is not a white person. Okay, this is not something I can write off as like ignorance, or like they're, the way where they live, they're, separate or isolated, and they don't have access to like other groups, and they're not, I guess they don't have a diverse array of friends or whatever. It's not like that at all. It's the opposite. That's what really blows me away. And it brought me back to this chick named Hannah Arendt, and she was like a survivor of Germany, like Nazi Germany, and she wrote about this guy. I think it was Eimrich. I'll put it up on screen because there was a couple things I wanted to read. And she talks about the banality of evil and basically how good people allow terrible shit to happen because it either doesn't affect them, they feel like they can't affect change, or they actually like agree with it because they're looking to be a part of something more than themselves. And a lot of it is rooted in like not having their own identity. And it, like, I don't know, dude. I feel like the color drained from my face when he was telling me that shit. I thought it was so chilling to just be okay with this dipshit take and then be proud of yourself that like this was the conclusion you came to.
Yeah, I almost feel like maybe this is a little bit of copium, but it feels like somebody who's gone too far into the quicksand and now has no choice but the acceptance stage, where they're too far gone to admit that they may have chosen the wrong side, so they'll never admit it to themselves or to others.
That, you want to know what makes this all the better, or the cherry on the sundae, as like Lucas would say? He didn't vote. He doesn't believe in voting.
Of course.
He said, I can't affect change anyway. They're all corrupt. Who gives a fuck? Right? And it's like, so then why are you complaining about the housing market? Why are you complaining about like your pay? Why are you complaining about anything then if you think it's pointless and it's all ineffective? Why the fuck do you have an opinion on anything?
Yeah, exactly. Nihilism is not a selective philosophy. If you're a nihilist, you are a nihilist. There are no shades of nihilism. There's the term. I'm not saying that you coined the term, but just harping on the term political nihilism. No, dog. You're either a nihilist for everything or you're not a nihilist. That's how the term works.
Like definitionally correct. Yeah, I
right.
understand.
So if you truly are a nihilist, then just shut the fuck up. If you want to contribute to the conversation by being a nihilist and giving the nihilist perspective, sure. But the fact is that you are picking and choosing. It almost sounds like a religion. You're picking and choosing the components of the philosophy that you want to espouse because it best suits your preconceived ideas and your preferences. So the fact that you're wishy-washy about your nihilism means you're inherently not a nihilist. And if you truly believe that way about politics, good for you, but don't be surprised when people push you aside from here on out.
Yeah, dude. I don't even know. I don't even know what the fuck to say about it. It was beyond insane to me. Here.
Yeah, also, like, does no one remember the legacy of the bill that passed in Arizona in 2010, where they basically did what now the entire federal government is doing, where they just said that they can basically stop and frisk you for papers at any given moment, and it was found just wrought with crimes against humanity, wrought with civil rights violations, wrought with all these different problems. And it feels like, even though there were proponents of it back then, the fact that now we've gotten to the point where 70 million people voted for a guy that blatantly said that he would do this, and they're supporting it. I don't know, man. Like, it gets really hard sometimes to not feel a sense of just utter dread regarding the situation. But even if you do, you've got to brush that off and move forward, because there is a dark present reality that we're in, and it only looks like it's going to get worse from here.
Yeah, I don't even know fully how to put to words like how disgusting I found the entire conversation. And also, obviously, like, I'm watering it down, but
yeah. Also, a philosophical observation that I'd like people to maybe give their feedback on, because to me it seems obvious. Specifically in overturning naturalization through birthright, I just want all Americans born in America to understand that those are essentially and philosophically the exact same fucking parameters that granted you citizenship. You are a citizen, I am a citizen, because we were born in the United States. But because our parents were also born in the United States, it somehow is a radical difference, both philosophically and legally, to somebody who escapes harm and potential persecution in their country and gives birth here, chasing this bullshit American dream narrative that's been dead in clubs like baby seals for the last 40 years. But because they had a kid in the country and that kid now got citizenship because of it, it's somehow completely different. And there are tons of people who can't even remotely acknowledge the similarities between the two scenarios. Citizens in America didn't earn shit. I did less to earn my citizenship than somebody who went through all of South and Central America with nothing but cash on their person and a backpack. I did less to deserve it than they did. So for me to then turn around and persecute these people and vote people in office that are going to throw them into fucking Gitmo for God knows what crimes against humanity they're going to potentially commit there is just disgusting. It screams an ever pervasive lack of self-realization and self-reflection. And I think it's one of the larger underpinning problems with American culture.
I wanted to read a couple passages from her book. Before I do that, I do want to use this as an opportunity to once again shit on liberals as failures. Like,
it's easy to do.
It is. I feel like people are going to think I'm a Republican or something, a rhino or whatever. But like, the reality is like, you remember how they've been saying Nazi, 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 racist, 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 xenophobe, xenophobe, xenophobe. And it was like effective for a while. And then all the conservatives were like, actually, I am going to do these things because you say I am, right? I literally know someone who was like, I never considered myself racist, but now that they say I'm racist, I'm going to be racist. I'm going to consciously do this thing to like get under your skin. Okay. So you guys had a fucking opportunity to not sully these words. These words are supposed to mean something. If you call someone a fucking Nazi, that's supposed to have all the gravity in the world. right? If I call you a fucking racist, that's supposed to mean something. But they've done this shit where they've trivialized these words, and we've talked about this on the pilots, how in doing so you're running interference for real racism, real Nazis, real like ethnic supremacist attitudes, right? A real ideological fascist epistemic beliefs, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just wanted to use this as an opportunity in the event any DNC person ever sees our stuff. Fuck you guys. Like, everything happening right now is a direct result of your failure. Your inability to either understand what's going on in the country, your disconnect in terms of like, I don't know if it would be, I don't even know how to connect the dots from A to B, but like, that's what your strategists are for, right? Not some random dumbass online like myself. And then I don't know. I completely am at a loss because everything, I feel like all of this stuff is preventable. Every single one of these things was preventable, and not in like a difficult way. So I feel like Democrats directly benefited from the culture war by intentionally being able to point to the other side and be like, they're bad, they're evil, they're racist, they're Nazis, they're this, they're that. All the while, we benefit from having them in power because we still get all the corporate donations, we still get all of the kickbacks, we still get all the lobbying groups that are able to affect what policy we sign off on. And, you know, we can sit back and just get rich. But yeah, now I do sound like a libertarian.
There's only been fundamentally one consistent and great divide when it comes to politics, and that's people who have and people who don't.
Yeah.
The people that are in their positions do everything that they can to protect those positions because those positions are lucrative. And so they both have a role to play, but they're working in tandem, as I've been screaming at a microphone and to you and to everyone else I know, probably ad nauseum, and everyone's sick of me saying it, but they work together. There's no adversaries here. When you see adversarial relationships in government, the only one who may actually have any is maybe Trump because he's such a narcissist. But outside of that, everything's negotiable.
That's the thing.
Everything.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was to say, and everything is being negotiated.
That's the thing is, I think, okay, here's another hot take, and maybe it won't be. Maybe it'll be a tepid take for you. I think Trump is the most reasonable fucking person in his administration. I think that Trump cares about adulation and money and getting out of jail free card. I think if Democrats had facilitated that, he would have been a moderate candidate. But because they snubbed him and because he felt like, I don't know, everyone was demonizing him, he became like the perfect like lightning rod for all of these like hyper psychotic ethno-nationalists to rally behind and use him as a shield to really facilitate their actual plans. And then Trump, of course, he's the face of it, right? So everyone goes, oh, Trump's a Nazi, Trump's this, Trump's that. Trump doesn't give a fuck about any of this shit. I don't think Trump cares about poor white people in like Nebraska. I don't think Trump cares about black people. I don't think Trump cares about any of these people. He just wants money and to facilitate his lifestyle and to make sure he's not going to jail.
Yeah, sorry to do it to you again, but that's exactly what my thoughts on Trump are. I think
no, that's good. That's good.
I think the constant obsession with Trump, especially on the left, is what made him essentially a political martyr. And because he never validated those overreaching complaints, it only bolstered his position and it endeared him to his voter base. It endeared him to Republicans, but then also the real fascists, the real theocratic fascists that are behind him, the real demons and the real villains. They saw that he was sort of the simplistic moderate, so to speak, if you want to call it that they could manipulate the easiest. They were going to have a harder time doing it with other members of the Republican Party, and they certainly weren't going to be able to extend an olive branch to the other side because that's just how it works. But Trump was the easiest access into what we are now, which is literally endgame politics, endgame capitalism. And he's verifying that. And the only stake that he has in it is, like you said, he's just in it for himself. I literally think Donald Trump is probably the most malleable part of the American government. And the fact that Democrats made him stronger than he ever should have been. And yes, I will go to my grave saying that they are the ones that strengthened his positions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's everything that we've been saying about the elections, and everything that Democrats and liberals say in their rhetoric is all making a monument out of Donald Trump when all he ever was just a fucking milk toast capitalist.
And
That's all he ever was.
And he's been a Democrat for like 20 years, right?
Exactly.
Like, he's doing bump stock bans. He's doing all these like Democrat establishment. When I say Democrat, I don't mean like progressive. I mean like an actual typical moderate or establishment Democrat candidate. He, during the 2016 election, he was doing all that shit. He was for gay marriage. He's like, I don't give a fuck if Caitlyn Jenner uses my bathroom as long as it's in Trump Tower. Like you said, he's a fucking milquetoast capitalist. He didn't give a shit about any of this stuff. He actually signed, before they kicked trans out of the military, which the Republicans were going to strong arm him into doing anyway. He let them finish their fucking contracts. He let them get paid for their time, which no one talks about either. Like, there was like gays for Trump. There was blacks for Trump. There's all these groups for Trump. And then now, when he becomes this, like you said, a martyr, now these groups get radicalized. Okay. And then you have also like that strengthens his position. And then you just have fucking liberals rattling on about how he's evil and how he's this and how he's that. Trump was a fucking theater kid. Like, he wanted to be like, I think he just wanted adulation and to feel like he fit in. And I'm not saying this to humanize the man or to make him seem like he's a redemptive person behind like all the rhetoric and the insanity, because he's not. He's a bad guy. He's like he's actively choosing to be like this. I guess you could. I don't know if I like the word malleable, but he's the face of this. At least he knows what it is. But what I don't know how many times I talk to like a liberal or even a progressive, and they're like so goddamn arrogant when I'm talking to them, or even some fucking leftists piss me off too, because I'll ask them like, hey, I don't think that Trump's the real problem. He's just the dude who's driving the car. It's his administration that's the problem. It's these people behind him. And they're like, no, dude, he's the one that's choosing them. He's the mastermind. It's like, okay, you guys are fucking morons. I don't know.
Wasn't one of the main reasons that Trump even became relevant in 2016 due to Democratic or left outlets funding his campaign?
Yes.
Because it was like what is it called? The Pied Piper strategy, where they propped him up because he was seen as easier opposition for Clinton.
For Hillary Clinton, yeah.
Yeah, so
yeah.
let it never be forgotten or stricken from the record that this guy literally was fucking propped up by left money, by Democrat money, to go and just be an easy win. And here we are now, 8 years later and some change, facing literal fascism because of the people surrounding his administration. You could, and again, it's not like I'm trying to say that he should be absolved of any responsibility. You clearly still have to be an absolute bastard to listen to the people and do the things that these people are telling you to do. But his motives are as simplistic as you could possibly imagine. Because I remember telling so many people back in 2016, they're talking about how terrified they were of Donald Trump. And I said, I'm infinitely more terrified of Pence than I am of Trump. Pence is like the guy that if anything had ever happened to Trump and Pence took over, I don't even fucking know where we would be right now. I honestly feel like it would be full-blown Handmaid's Tale.
You know who Sorry, go ahead.
I was to say, and the only reason that it isn't like that now, and the reason that Pence has been backpedaling, is because Pence was facing direct, violent consequences for the things that he was saying in opposition of Trump.
The guy that fucked me up on his first term, what was his name? Stephen Miller? Was that it? He was like Trump's political advisor, right?
Yeah.
That guy fucked me up. I was like, this guy's evil, dude.
Yeah. I mean, it's for me, it's plainly obvious. You could see that the people in his orbit, so to speak, are the people that you should be really concerned about. And I'm not saying that he's not concerning. I'm just saying he just seems like you said, he's driving the car, but the other people that are piled into it are the ones that are going to fucking destroy everything.
Yeah. So bringing it back, the whole point of me going on that diatribe was to say that this would have been the time for liberals to use the Nazi rhetoric, the racist rhetoric, the xenophobic rhetoric, the white nationalist rhetoric, but they wasted it. And in doing so, they radicalized a whole bunch of like youth, and they emboldened the positions of these actual ideological like fascists. And I don't even like using the word fascist right now, because that's also been like defanged as a term, because people use it all the fucking time. So, but
yeah,
just to go back to the Eichmann in Jerusalem thing, it's an excerpt from her book. I know that we're kind of scattered, but I want people to really think about someone that they might know in their real life who's really and if they just don't care, they're real neutral. They basically say like, I don't vote, or they might even support some of the things that Trump is doing or the administration is doing. Okay, I wanted to read like a quick couple passages. It won't be long. Are you cool with that?
Yep, absolutely.
All right. So, far from the monster she thought he'd be, Eichmann was instead rather bland, terrifyingly normal bureaucrat. He carried out his murderous role with, by the way, for context, I'm pretty sure this is the guy that was overseeing the trains that were taking people to death camps. He carried out his murderous role with calm efficiency, not due to an aberrant, warped mindset, but because of a curious, quite authentic inability to think. His evil actions, Arendt noted, could not be traced to any particularity of wickedness, pathology, or ideological conviction in the doer, whose only personal distinction was perhaps an extraordinary shallowness. Eichmann absorbed the principles of the Nazi regime so unquestionably, never considering that their consequences from anyone else's perspective but his own, that his focus was simply to further his career within the regime and climb its ladders of power. For Arendt, he embodied the dilemma between the unspeakable horror of the deeds and the undeniable ludicrous of the man who perpetrated them. Eichmann stated in court that he had always tried to abide by Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative. She argues that Eichmann had essentially taken the wrong lesson away from Kant. Eichmann had not recognized, quote, the golden rule, which everyone knows, and the principle of reciprocity, implicit in the categorical imperative, but had understood only the concept of one man's actions coinciding with general law. Eichmann attempted to follow the spirit of the law as he carried them out, as if the legislator himself would approve. In Kant's formation of the categorical imperative, the legislator is the moral self, and all people are legislators. In Eichmann's formation, however, the legislator was Hitler. Eichmann claimed that this changed when he was charged with carrying out the final solution, at which point Arendt says he had ceased to live according to Kantian principles, that he had as he had known it, and that he had consoled himself with the thoughts that he was no longer, quote, the master of his own deeds, and that he was unable to change anything. Arendt said that the moral choice remains even under a totalitarianism, and under conditions of terror, although most people will comply, some people will not. Just as the lesson of the countries to which the final solution was proposed, that it, quote unquote, could happen, in many of those places it did not happen. So when I talked to Josiah at work, the way he was so flippant, the way that he gave no fucks, the way he basically was like, oh, it's fine, I don't care. It is what it is, right? Like, I can't change anything about it. It makes me think of this. Not to be hyperbolic about it.
Yeah, I mean, what's the quote for true evil to take hold? It stands.
Good men to do nothing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's been espoused through all of history, and America in 2025 today, I think, could be extremely accurately categorized as a nation that is totally disconnected from the history of the world. I mean, you see it in education, you see it in conversation and discourse surrounding historical record. We can't even establish what history is. The rest of the world seems to be a lot better at agreeing upon what history is. And now we're the ones that have just walked fascism in through the door because we have no context, or some of us don't even care about the context. Some of us are rooting for it because the American government has done so little to address the needs of the people for the last 70 years and change. I mean, it's insane to me, and this is why this all kind of stems into why you and I will go on a whole thing about liberals and Democrats, is because it feels like everything, like you said earlier, all of this was avoidable. And the fact that at every turn, it seems the wrong decisions were made makes me start to suspect that maybe your best interests haven't been considered or at heart of public service, maybe since forever, or at the very least, not since World War II.
Yeah. I wanted to show a quick clip from a CNN interview as we kind of like wrap up this segment before we get into the last two. I'll also make this quick, but I think it goes... It's like a nice... I want people to look at this shit because I don't think people are getting what they should from like media right now, especially like people are... What with the algorithm and everything, and then people will... We've talked about this the last episode. Two different people from ideological spectrums will watch the same piece of media and get completely different fucking things out of it. But Tom Homan went on CNN and was getting pressed about the deportation stuff. And you know what he had to say? He said, I'm mad. I'm mad that we're not being more effective because we've got these goddamn blue states and these fucking sanctuary cities that are educating immigrants on their rights. Like, think about that shit. Like, I'm mad that people know the law, and he lies. He fucking lies. And he's so quick with the lie that I didn't catch it at first. I watched it a second time, and then I caught it. And he basically implies directly that the only people that are being assisted by blue states are criminals. Not children, not people in hospitals, not your average fucking farmhand or people that are working to just survive, right? That he says that blue states are helping criminals escape justice. So you and I kind of have a belief that we will see another executive order making it illegal to aid these people because it'll be like some obstructionist charge or like preventing I don't know, something that like prevents the federal jurisdiction, and it'll either come with a felony or it'll come with like a hefty fucking fine.
I legitimately believe that American politicians are going to be rounded up in cuffs within the next few months, and I God help anybody who doesn't have the epiphany at that moment, if you haven't had it already.
Here, let me switch over. I just want people to see this shit for themselves.
After public safety threats, national security threats first, but you just said that aperture is going to widen, meaning the scope of the people you're going to go after. How long do you anticipate before you're in that next phase where the aperture has gotten wider?
Very soon. I mean, sanctuary cities are making it very difficult to arrest the criminals. For instance, Chicago, very well educated. They've been educated how to defy ICE, how to hide from ICE. And I've seen many pamphlets from many NGOs. Here's how you escape ICE from arresting you. Here's what you need to do. They call it know your rights. I call it how to escape arrest. There's a warrant for your arrest, and they tell you how to hide from ICE. No, don't open your door. Don't answer questions. Okay, you can call it know your rights all you want, but there's an order for their removal. They've been ordered removed by a federal judge after due process at great taxpayer expense. They need to go. But if we got to play that cat and mouse game, that's what we're going to do till every one of them gone.
In terms
Jesus
of how you're messed.
Yeah, so I don't know if it finished if you're watching it on the live. I know we got a delay, but
Yeah, no, it just finished up for me because of the delay, but
Yeah.
I'm actually glad that we watched that because I had something I was going to mention to you, and I'm sure you'll agree with me.
well, I probably want real quick though. Like he just fucking blatantly lies, right? Like you caught it? Because it's like that's not fucking true. Because the majority of the people that are being arrested and detained, there aren't warrants for. Like that's patently false. And then it's again a dragnet operation where they're going in and they're cool with collateral arrests. They're saying, "Oh, well, hey, you're in the room with this person, or this is a family member. Why don't we take all of you in and just make sure that you're not, a problem?" And then this is the same motherfucking guy that was on 60 Minutes who said, when they asked him, how are you going to do mass deportations without separating families? This is the fucking demon that said, well, we'll just deport the entire family. That's how we don't separate people.
Yeah, they have no intention of separating families. They will just boot everybody. and then put them in Gitmo for undisclosed activity.
Cool story.
Yeah. By the way, just a quick note about those Gitmo camps. I just want people to understand how bipartisan this issue is. Because there was a lot of information being kicked around that they were going to be building entirely new structures to house these migrants. But that's not true. A lot of they might be expanding and making them larger, but some of the facility that they plan on using were already in existence through previous and Democratic administrations. And they were used to, like, for example, Biden with the Haitian immigrants. They had plans to hold up to 45,000 Haitian immigrants in Gitmo while they pended their cases. Now, again, contextually,
God, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, contextually, I don't think it's quite as demonic as what they're implying with the Trump administration by signing it as an executive order to forcibly place them in Gitmo. But the fact that people are saying it like these are brand new facilities that have never been created before, and they're these brand new concentration camps that have never existed, is patently false. And Democrats have historically intended to or even put immigrants in Gitmo for immigration purposes.
Yeah, I remember this controversy right here.
Yeah, because I mean, there's whole articles about Biden's administration and how he took like one step forward and two steps back when it came to Guantanamo Bay. The fact that, you know, a lot of people on the Democratic and liberal side were looking to him to finally kind of put the last nail in the coffin to completely get rid of Guantanamo Bay and its utility to the American government. Not only did he not do that, but he actually almost expanded upon its activity and, in a sense, almost paved the way for the current thing that's about to happen now per executive order.
Absolutely.
So I think it just paints a broader picture of how pervasive this issue is in American government. But I'm not 100% equating the two behaviors, as I said earlier. But
of course not. But
it can't be glossed over either.
Also, I just want to, because I'm petty, I'm big petty like this. Stop telling me Biden is good for black people. Stop telling me Biden cares about black people. Fuck off. Like, historically, that's not true. And then also, this story, I think, was a great example of it. Even though they weren't actually cracking whips on them, it's still, like, that was the one group he was like, no, I mean, we already have enough of them here. We gotta get them the fuck out of here.
I mean, they were eating the dogs, so...
yeah, but that came later. They had to get established illegally first, right?
Yeah, of course.
I fucking hate these people so much, dude.
Yeah.
Not the migrants, the politicians.
Right, of course, yeah. The one thing that I wanted to add as an extension of that video that you played, because of his hatred for sanctuary cities, which, just as a statement on its own, I think should send red flags everywhere.
Sure.
If you are an active member of the US government and you hate sanctuary cities, there's something fucking wrong with you. And there's something wrong with the fact that you're being armed against them by the president of the United States. But anyway, this leads me to a concern and a potential assumption, a prediction that I have. Eric Adams.
Oh, God.
Mayor of New York.
Deport Eric Adams. Do that. Sorry, go ahead.
Surrounded by controversy, currently pending several criminal investigations and trials, seems to suddenly be approached by MAGA media and MAGA sympathetic parts of the American government. New York is one of, if not the largest sanctuary city in the country, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. You're not wrong.
The fact that he's facing federal charges and has since sort of cozied up to the current administration leads me to believe that there is a completely reasonable likelihood that he turns over all of those immigrants that are living in those sanctuary cities to the federal government for prosecution.
Which is so funny. It's so funny to me because he's the one that like funneled them into certain like certain boroughs and stuff in New York, and he's the one that actively created hostile tensions between immigrants and like the black community, or immigrants and like the poor Hispanic community or a poor white community or poor black, you know what I mean? Like, so it's super funny that he's like, I'm gonna make everyone's life worse, then I'm gonna sell them all out.
Yeah, 100%. And I have to watch, because he did a full interview with Tucker Carlson recently, within the last week and a half or 2 weeks. I still have yet to sit down and watch it, but just looking at the timestamps that Tucker put into the video, one of the topics or one of the timestamps is marked with the title, How Sanctuary Cities and Immigration Destroyed New York City.
Oh my!
And
what?
While there's a potential to get into the episode and see that Eric Adams doesn't share that characterization of what happened, the fact that that's what's being presented in the conversation, and the fact that Eric Adams is facing all the issues that he's having, Tucker Carlson is somebody that would have never spoken to Eric Adams 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, and now all of a sudden that olive branch has been extended, all because Eric Adams is being just absolutely buried in corruption charges and potential prison time.
Okay, I actually have a disagreement with you, believe it or not.
Okay.
All right, my disagreement is I absolutely think Tucker Carlson would have talked to Eric Adams 2 years ago. But here's the caveat, okay? Maybe we'll agree on this, actually. The caveat would be about police and how protesters are bad and how we need more cops on every corner and we need to fund them continually. Because Eric Adams, people forget, was a fucking cop. And Eric Adams fucking loves police unions.
Yeah, I think my clarification would be that I'm not saying that they wouldn't have spoken to each other because of ideological differences. They wouldn't have spoken to each other for political optics.
Okay, then I would
They
agree.
wouldn't have,
I guess I would.
yeah,
agree.
they wouldn't have spoken to each other because New York City and Eric Adams, by extension, was once one of the poster children for the Democratic Party and democratic ideals, supposedly, at least in American government.
Okay.
Even though nothing that he actually did reflected that.
Just to give you context as to why I initially disagreed, is because I don't view Tucker Carlson as necessarily ideologically grounded in anything. I think that he's like a propagandist, and I think that he's like a predatory opportunist. So if there's something
100%.
he can cut content on, he'll do it.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that as well. But yeah, I think I was more trying to say that they wouldn't have spoken to each other because there would have been too much heat surrounding the conversation for different bureaucratic motivations.
I got you.
But they're two people that I think absolutely probably share and agree on more things than they do disagree on.
Don't you know, brother, after Tucker Carlson went to fucking Russia, everything's on the table now.
God, and how great are those Russian supermarkets? I mean, Jesus Christ.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I've got so much more ammunition for different topics like that. I haven't even discussed anything environmental. And I'll probably save some of that heat, especially with some headlines that have popped up as we've been talking. But I just want people to understand that when you have an active president who blanketly pardons an entire group of people that was involved in what some may want to refer to as, and some aren't ready to admit to, as an insurrection attempt. Let's just call it a violent demonstration.
No, no, we're calling it an insurrection. Fucking Republicans called it an insurrection when it happened.
Right. They wanted you to believe that that's what it was. And then when they faced persecution for it, they backpedaled and said that the only people that actually said that were feds that had infiltrated the movement and were trying to basically be agent provocateurs.
Oh, that's crazy. So Ben Shapiro is a fed. So
Absolutely.
Tucker Carlson is a fed. Actually, his dad was in the CIA, unironically.
They're all going to be part of the Ministry of Truth.
Charlie Kirk was a fed. All these political, Steven Crowder was a fed. Okay, all these people that are saying the thing now didn't say the thing then. So I don't understand. Either conservatives have to concede that they've been socially engineered and everything they believe is bullshit, and they're basically the useful idiots that they claim that communists are, or they themselves are aligned. Like I don't know.
Yeah, also, how is it that you spend all of the breath that you have convincing me that they aren't guilty of any wrongdoing, but then on day one, week one of the new presidency, it is top priority to legally pardon and absolve these people of the wrongdoing that they were supposedly never guilty of in the first place. Now, I know what you're going to say. I know some people are going to say, well, they were wrongfully persecuted, so he's pardoning them as a way to get that off their back. I was reading deeper into the story. He has actually expunged a lot of their criminal records.
That's true.
Unrelated to the insurrection. If that's not buying loyalty, then I don't know what is. And if you don't think there's going to be a boost in January 6th insurrectionists applying for these recently vacated federal government positions.
Oh, yeah. I hadn't even thought about that. You're right.
Yeah. And you know why I feel validated in that belief? Because the fucking governor of Illinois agrees with me. He has already come out and made a public statement that he will flatly ban any J6 absolved criminals from holding positions of government in the state of Illinois. Like he saw it too, which means, frankly, to me, that he probably has more background information on it than I do. But the fact that he's already come out and made a bold proclamation about that means that this was probably the plan all along. And that should terrify you.
I think he's going to get, you remember how like those extremists tried to kill Gretchen Whitmer and her family?
Yeah.
I think that's what's going to happen to him if he's not careful.
Yeah. JB Pritzker, by the way.
Pritzker.
Fucking
yes.
New, an emerging hero for the resistance, let's call it. Trump blanketly pardons 1,500 fucking people, even violent offenders, and has expunged a lot of their civil case records as well. Some of them sexual assaults, rapes, petty crimes, whatever the fuck it is. They basically have a completely clean record now. Do you know why that's relevant? Because you have to have that in order to hold a position with the government. So he completely wipes and expunges all of their criminal records to basically propel them into candidacy to hold a federal government job. And now he's trying to buy out all existing and embedded members of the federal government at the same time. Sorry, I'm not even going to allow someone to call me a conspiracy theorist about that, because I think it's objectively what's happening. And I think it should be plainly obvious once those red strings are tied together.
Yeah, we're getting drone striked.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, what's that shiny thing above my window?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the New Jersey drones are now over my house. Only my house. Yeah, dude. No, it's fucking crazy. Breaking news as of like 30 minutes ago. Trump's Justice Department has reportedly fired every J6 prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office for D.C.
Oh my God, we have to read about this and report on it tonight too. Fuck, dude.
Yeah. So this is like, again, like I said, I've been refreshing news feeds and I'm getting news feeds. So I'm only mentioning this one because it's directly a follow-up to what I'm saying.
I know.
He just fired every J6 federal prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office. What the fuck?
I don't even know how you can do that.
Well, we'll see if it's upheld, because right now they're even investigating the legality of the buyout that I was mentioning. Because he's literally offering 8 months pay plus benefits.
I saw
and
that.
It's even in the phrasing that they're going to be allowed to hold another job while they're getting that 8 months pay. So it's not like unemployment. They're going to be allowed to have other income streams, like investing in Donald Trump Media, Truth Media, while getting all this money. And the Department of Justice was asked directly by the press if they endorse the legality of that potential buyout. And the DOJ will not address it with a direct answer.
That's insane, dude.
The DOJ, the Department of Justice, will not answer a question on whether or not they can actually say that this is a legal offer. And the reason that it's contentious is because it steps outside of, it's technically being classified as government spending outside of what has been declared in the federal budget. Wow. And I think it's hilarious to me that the federal government and Doge are telling me that they want to cut $4 billion per year or whatever to fix the deficit, but they're fully willing to pay out every single federal employee 8 months pay plus benefits right now for the next 8 months. They're willing to shell that money out because it's a great return on investment for what they want to achieve. But they want to cut every other government-funded program possible.
Yeah, I have no words, dude.
Yeah, I mean, what is it? And, you know, I have no idea how one interprets that information in any other context other than the context that I'm currently interpreting in. I know that sounds solipsistic and narcissistic, but I'm begging people, please, I'm begging people to see eye to eye with me on at least this particular observation.
Trump fires all Jan 6 prosecutors?
Yeah. So it is reported, supposedly, you know, like the source that I'm using isn't an official like Associated Press or anything like that. So
I'm on Associated Press, so they've got it covered.
Oh, well, there you go.
Oh Christ, dude! Firing, freezes, and layoffs. A look at Trump's moves against federal employees and their programs. Let's see where the Justice Department fires lawyers. Justice Department and fires employees. Where did it go? Just had it.
Oh, and by the way, speaking of massive cuts to the budget, apparently a prominent position. Oh God, I've got to find what it is. There was a prominent member of government that just resigned their seat over a direct conflict with Elon Musk because Elon Musk wants uninhibited access to social security payment systems.
No, dude. No, this is like they literally ran on not doing this shit.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can find it because again, I definitely don't want to be the person that says it and then have it not be validated. But I saw it, and now
I'm not saying I disbelieve you. I'm saying that at what point do people go, okay, I got.
Here we go. David A. Lebrick, sorry if I'm mispronouncing the last name, a senior Treasury Department official, is resigning after over 30 years at the agency, as reported by the Washington Post. Lebrick's exit follows a clash with Elon Musk's team regarding access to Treasury-sensitive payment systems, which manage over $6 trillion annually. Musk's Doge team has sought access to these systems since the election, raising concerns about conflicts of interest, according to the Post. The resignation is expected to have significant repercussions within the department, as Lebrick was viewed as a nonpartisan figure during his tenure. Guys, he is trying to gain access to $6 trillion that are allocated to Social Security and Medicare payments. He is trying to force his way into your fucking payments, into your benefits, all in the sake of bolstering Americans' position and making America great again. He's going to kill half of you. He's going to kill you. He's going to bankrupt what he doesn't kill. And this is all because this is supposedly supposed to make us stronger as a people.
So just for clarification, the dude resigned in opposition of, right?
Correct.
Why the fuck would you do that? When you're in a position of power. Sorry. I gotta.
I'm concerned because of the implications of like I think maybe we may find that there wasn't so much an amicable resignation as much as a coerced decision.
Dude, I okay, because I was gonna say, why the fuck, if you're in a position of power or you're the bastion preventing this bullshit from happening, why the fuck would you go, well, I don't like this, so I'm gonna remove myself from this situation?
Yeah, I mean,
but you're probably right. Realistically, without my knee-jerk fucking rage, they probably were like, hey, remember that time you went on vacation in Cabo? Here's a photo. It's time for you to tender your resignation.
Yeah, I mean, it means that at worst, he was forced out, and at best, he allowed it to happen. Like, again, there's no positive result here. I'm trying to kind of scramble and find different sources about it. It's kind of shockingly not.
I'm on the newrepublic.com right now. Here.
Yeah,
tell me if this is.
I'm on zerohedge.com, which I know has some blatant questions in terms of their impartiality. But I'm scrambling to find news sources that are even covering it right now. I've only found like 4 or 5.
Dude, this guy, it says right here that this guy is... The Washington Post reports that David Lebrick, who has worked in the department for decades and is his longest-serving career official, will depart soon after conflicting with Musk's deputies over the access to government's payment systems used to distribute trillions of dollars every year. Until Scott... was it Bessent? These fucking names, bro. Until his confirmation as Treasury Secretary on Monday, Lebrecht served as acting head of the department. So they're gonna get it anyway. It was just, oh my god.
Yeah, because it's backed by executive order, because the executive order says that Doge is supposed to basically get whatever access they ask for. So in order to properly do their jobs, they're saying there is no limitation on the power of Doge. I just want people to understand.
It's not even an official government sanctioned department.
An unelected individual has been given full unimpeded access to the federal government. An unelected person. Nobody voted for Elon Musk.
Anybody that knows me that might watch this, or any of our fans or whatever, if we ever make anything of it without getting like fucking waterboarded by the federal government by making this show, don't ever fucking talk to me about George Soros. Don't ever fucking bring up George Soros to me and like how liberals have billionaires performing all these shadowy operations and doing all this shit when you have fucking Elon Musk literally about ready to get rid of Social Security.
Yeah, guys, this is like Thanos coming in and saying, you guys have a real Green Goblin problem. Let me take care of him.
Exactly. Oh my god, that's perfect.
And they literally listened to Thanos and they went, oh my god, you're right. Green Goblin is ruining our country. Thanos is the solution.
Here's the time stone, Thanos. Please take it.
Yeah, it's a long running joke, at least in my head, about Americans' obsession with their own damnation, and this just seems to all align with that in my mind.
I almost feel bad now that I made Trump Thanos. I feel like Elon is Thanos. That's crazy.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you're the head of it, if you're the face of it, I think you've earned the Thanos characterization, but it's just like, it's insane to me that all of the solutions or all the problems that were highlighted during the campaign and people ate up are the things that they are actively going to make worse and accelerate now that you've given them the keys.
Oh my god. Okay. Great.
Speaking of pardons from President Trump, do you think that they're going to give Sam Bankman-Fried a pardon? Because that's what his parents are trying to get right now.
No, I don't think so. I think it would, maybe if it benefited them in some way, because don't forget, and I said this on the pilot, he made the cardinal mistake of stealing from rich people. You don't fucking do that.
But Trump is also really big on bringing people back under a boot to help bolster his positions and his monetary gains. If he can leash Sam Bankman-Fried to go, especially with all the announcements that were basically opening up the floodgates on cryptocurrency in the United States, if he were to pardon Sam Bankman-Fried and said, basically, you'll do whatever I ask to make me as much fucking money as possible that's untraceable, I'm just saying, I wouldn't be surprised.
If we're going to go that route, and we're going to... Sorry, I had a dog barking in the background.
No worries. As you said last time, dog friendly. Dog friendly.
Sorry. Show. My roommate's dog is wilding out. But we're a pet friendly broadcast, so if we're going to go that route, though, I genuinely think it would be he's leashing the parents, because aren't both of the parents like big to like how to do like financial lawyers or something?
Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure that it was the parents' idea. This sounds like something that somebody would advise them to consider. And I'm going to attach it loosely to my my grand tech bro conspiracy that I'll unleash on the world later tonight. But I think that they might be connected in some way, loosely.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to you unveiling your big brain theory.
God, yeah. Just indulging my ramblings. But
we're almost 2.5 hours deep, so let's wrap up. We'll run through the federal funds getting rescinded and how that's a big W, the first W we've had under this administration. and then we can talk about the DEI plane crash, and then we can wrap up, and then we can strike back later tonight.
Yeah, we have a lot that we're going to revisit. So again, that's kind of all why we wanted to do it as a two-parter. But yeah, as much as we've talked about the losses that we're getting hit with, I think it would be good to at least discuss one. I have a hard time calling it a win because the situation is so fucked in the first place. But I guess that would be the only way to characterize it. There was an actual win in which people in positions of power stood up to things that were just blatantly unconstitutional and heavily detrimental to the entire government and to the entire citizenry of the United States.
Clawing back anything from these people is a win, in my opinion. Even if it will come back, and I feel like it will come back. They'll try this again in different ways or like bits and pieces. But for now, people can at least access their fucking Medicaid portal.
Oh no, we're not. It's not going to affect Medicaid.
Oh yeah, we're just going to lie. I mean, why not?
Yeah,
that's why it was. Well, isn't it interesting how it wasn't supposed to affect like WIC or Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid, but like across the entire country, no one in any state could access the Medicaid portal. Isn't that funny how that happens?
Yeah, and it took the same governor of Illinois that we mentioned earlier and gave a shout out to earlier. Stay safe, by the way, please. It took him having an open press conference in which he was like, I feel obligated to tell you this because of how much of an issue this is. But they blatantly lied about which departments of government and which programs were going to be impacted by the freeze. The press secretary lied directly to the media's face about what was being frozen and what wasn't. And so I'm essentially blowing the whistle on this. And from that announcement, they had no choice between that and legal action against them to rescind the order.
Partially because even before that, we had the judge that blocked it, right? The federal judge blocked it. She could only do temporary blocks, from my understanding. Right. She's only allowed a certain amount of them. So it's good that it came when it did.
I mean, this was going to have the most immediate catastrophic impact on the United States of anything that was announced, I think.
Federal judge, I would say even arguably national hero, Lauren L. Ali Khan. That's a foreign name. You're getting deported.
Sorry.
She's out of the United States District of Columbia. She blocked the freeze, and she put a pause on the execution of this. There's like 2 EOs for that, and she put a pause on them. So he just did I guess he did a recall.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully there was enough movement happening in opposition to force the rescinding of that order. But as I've kind of been having the conversation with other people, the fact that it was proposed in the first place, nothing screams the government thinks that you are their enemy or you're their barrier to success more than we're going to gut any federal funding pertaining to your healthcare, financial assistance, any program that doesn't align with our, let's be honest, religious and philosophical views on the world and on humanity. And we are also, granted this part isn't being dialed back at all, we're also going to completely gut the global south and the funding that we give them. That's part of my rant that I'm going to go on part 2. But it was the most sweeping and alarming thing that I think that they announced. So thankfully, at least this one got blocked.
Yeah. I'm going to change the name of the show to We Hate Liberals, I think, because I don't know if you saw this, but Chuck Schumer, aka Cuck Schumer, got up and did a real fiery, and by fiery I mean tepid speech about how it's not fair to the American families and hospitals and yada, yada, yada. But before he even mentioned hospitals or support structures for American families, you know who he mentioned? Police. He said, I love this so much. He said that Republicans judge Democrats for defunding the police, but that's actually what Republicans are doing. I wanted to be like, dude, no one believes you. Like, no one fucking believes that the Democrats are the pro-police party, even though you guys are. Even though you guys give police more funding, or just as much funding as Republicans, okay? No one fucking believes that. They think you're fucking communists. So Just stick to the fucking, like, the values for the working class and the poor people. Don't bring up the fucking cops, okay? The cops didn't even vote for you. Why are you worried about the fucking cops? Shit triggers the fuck out of me.
We have to be worried about the cops because if people really do find out that we're both against them, then the cops are the last line of defense that we have.
Yeah, but then, surprise, half the cops won't side with us.
Yeah, whoops.
Yeah.
What do you mean if we cut all their pensions and all their government-assisted programs that they may not like us as much?
I feel like there's a snide joke in there somewhere that, like, obviously I know this is not all police, but when Chuck Schumer is up there panicking about the police, I just wanted to be like, oh God, he's like 2 neighborhoods over from black people. he's worried. Oh God, give them their funding
guys,
back.
Can't forget the cops.
Yeah.
Can't forget the cops, guys.
Blue lives matter, guys. Blue lives matter. Oh God.
Who's gonna save me?
Yeah, I've come to the conclusion, okay, that Democrats are into BDSM, specifically their subs, and they love ritual humiliation. Okay, they want to get called dirty commies. They want to be called like sympathetic to socialists. They want to be blatantly humiliated and constantly derided and made to look like fucking scum in front of not just the Republicans in the House and Senate, but also in front of the American people. And I think they get off on that. Like, that's the kind of the conclusion I've come to, and it helps me curb my internal rage against these people.
Well, especially with ones that are embedded in positions of power, it's sort of their cloak that they get to put over themselves when it comes to actually facing any sort of accountability from their constituency. Because as much as people want to talk about how Republican voters don't hold Republican candidates accountable for the things that they do that don't represent their interests, I would argue that it's actually more prevalent on the Democratic side. I have never seen stronger mental gymnastics than from your average liberal in a political debate about the Democratic National Convention. Like it's
oh my God, true.
They're so well exercised and toned for the task that they are just so good at weaving. They're weaving around any criticisms of their own party because their party has the morally upstanding defense mechanism. And they're the last bastion of defense against total Christian fascism. Well, every time we give you guys the keys to something, yeah, you make the economy a little bit better and you make things a little bit more tepid, but you're still not actually giving and delivering on the things that you claim that you're going to and the things that are getting you voted in the first place. So you're basically just acting as the struggling piece of twine that's keeping everything held together, and eventually that twine snaps and everything blows up in our faces.
Yeah, man, you gotta stay limber, okay, if you're constantly getting bent over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know. It's insane. What was it you said to me? That it involved something about backshots before we started streaming? I fucking thought it was so hilarious.
God, I don't remember. I don't even know. I can't, for some reason.
Yeah,
I can't
it was Democrats.
Out of the vault.
Democrats basically something about them and like having to be compromised, and it included like fiscal policy and backshots or something. It was like so off the cuff. It was fucking hilarious. I wish that we had been streaming when you said it.
Yeah, no, I wish so too, because I can't remember the phrasing, but I mean but they're proud to be in that position. Is always kind of circling back to our perception that it's a concerted effort between two supposed opposition parties, and they have roles to play.
Because it's theater. It's fucking theater. And I'm gonna say this now before someone steals my idea, okay? And I'm gonna tweet this. I'm gonna tweet it. I think that the whole, going back to the previous conversation that we had last stream about Democrats wanting their own Joe Rogan. Check this out. I've been thinking about this. People are saying Jon Stewart, and I say, no, I don't think Jon Stewart. I think Jon Stewart's too pretentious about certain things for the average like Republican. But you know who Republicans that I know and Democrats that I know love, and who I think they'll actually listen to? Bill Burr.
Oh yeah,
I think Bill Burr would be a great Joe Rogan alternative for the left, because he will fucking roast the shit out of people like who's that smarmy fuck? Bill Maher. They'll roast Bill Maher. They'll go on their shows. They have access to all these people in media and politics already. right? They have a social media presence already. I think that the DNC don't fucking hire Destiny, dumbasses. Don't fucking do that, even though you're going on his show and you're fucking interviewing him. I don't know if you saw any of those. Destiny was like interviewing the heads, people that were running for the DNC before he had his like most recent scandal.
No, I haven't watched a lot from him because I saw some clips and it just felt like everything that he said from that point on was going to be about the same.
Yeah, that's fair. He's also like a great example of someone that's constantly like ballistic stretching and ready to do cartwheels for fucking whatever the DNC decision is. Like he actually supported the TikTok ban even after learning about all the stuff that you and I had discussed and learned. Like you and I stayed up till 4 a.m. reading. He knows all this shit and still was like, oh, I think it's probably for the best, because that was the Democratic position.
Yeah,
so,
no, he's a homer for sure,
yeah.
And he's openly admitted to such. And he's such a, I mean, he's one of the main examples that you and I kicked around when we talked about how we felt political media was being corrupted in the worst possible way.
Yeah,
he was like one of the first names that came to our minds when discussing a bad example or a perfect example of the problems that we were highlighting.
And it's so disgusting too, because someone like Destiny he's the chosen one, right? Like he's I don't want to go off on a Destiny tangent, but he's like every single possible thing that Democrats needed or that liberals needed to de-radicalize hyper far right people, bring them over, and then like start giving them an actual alternative to the talking point and facilitating like something that's pseudo educational to make people feel good about what they're buying into. He had all that. He had the framework for it. Whether it's real or not, whether it's like Vibans fueled or not, I don't care, right? He had it. And then it's like, how do you let lightning out of the bottle, bro? But
yeah, I mean, go and watch literally any Destiny debate and you'll find that he's just the Democrats' answer to Ben Shapiro. And that's all he's ever been, and that's all he ever will be.
I agree with you.
They both have the same behavior sets. They both have the same debate tactics. It's just ridiculous.
But he came to prominence during the time where Ben Shapiro was stacking bodies in debates, and he came about like because he was like a StarCraft player and an MLG guy, but like he really rose to prominent because everyone's like, oh, the left won't debate, the left won't debate, the left won't debate, and he's like, I'll fucking debate you, and he was eating conservatives alive. Like when I first really got into Destiny content was when him and Vosh were eating Nazis assholes, bro. They were destroying people like Eric Stryker and like some of these other people, what was her name? I ended up debating her with the amazing Lucas, Brittany from Politically Provoked. These fucking neo-Nazis and stuff like that. He would destroy them, okay? And that's how I first heard about him, because I was like, oh, this is super cool, right? But no, it's that whole live long enough to see yourself become the villain, or maybe you were always the villain, masquerading as the good guy. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, I mean, I think he asserted himself as sort of a catharsis for liberals to be that sort of like snarky, fast-talking, sort of almost witty, if you want to give him that much credit, liberal voice that was completely non-existent in media, especially social media. So he injected himself into a medium that was completely ignored by overly dry and sort of bland liberal NPR level media consumption, and he brought a fresh face to it. He was like the new generation of liberal media, because this is something that conservatives were already way ahead of them on, because there are whole funded organizations in which conservative outlets are funding young people to go be influencers on social media for their ideology. And the Democrats, historically and unsurprisingly, didn't give a shit about any of that, because they rested on the laurels of, we have the moral high ground, so we don't need to try, we don't need to stoop. And what that does after enough time is it frustrates people and it enrages them, and it makes them go, I really just want somebody to just go to the right. I want them to go to conservatives and Christians, whatever the group is, and just tell them to go fuck themselves. And Destiny saw that and he went, I'll tell them.
Yeah. I think that there was definitely a need for it at the time. But now we have a different need. We need it. I won't say we, because I'm not technically like a leftist or a liberal or any of that shit, right? But like, this is where I'm more aligned at the moment on my spectrum, right? Like, I have more in common with a fucking progressive than I do with like these other people. and moderates make me mad. So I would say, without revealing my position, I would say that like we need the Joe Rogan-esque figure, but it won't fix the problem. Oreus asked in chat, is Hassan a good example of the left? I think it depends on what part of the left you're asking about. Like Hassan is a socialist. He's not a progressive. He's a socialist.
I think he's the best, maybe the best representation of like the millennial Gen Z left.
Yeah.
In the sense that they all kind of are being bubbled up into like Hassan would call himself, he's all in for the communist meme of everything.
Yeah.
And communist associative. I would say Vosh is probably more the socialist to Hassan's communist. At least in what they say, not necessarily in what they do, because you and I have both kind of talked.
I think in execution, it's actually the opposite.
I know. It's just like as far as their outward projection and what they would want their audience or viewers to believe.
Yeah.
I think Hassan probably has the best corner on the maybe more soft-spoken, like socialist left, and similar to Vosh, whereas Destiny has kind of ascended himself into looping in or like lumping in with really arrogant people. As it's the only best way I can put it, because when I hear Destiny, I hear Ben Shapiro plus Bill Maher, but as a millennial. That's all I hear.
That's
all I hear is a younger combination of those two. The arrogance, the willingness to stoop down to those levels, so to speak. Whereas I find that content creators like Hassan or Vosh are probably still floating above a separate entity, so to speak.
I think if you're Oreus, if you're interested in left-leaning content, I think that you have to cherry pick certain traits from each of these people. Like Vosh has some really interesting insights on certain things, especially like ear to the ground, like socially speaking, with like certain marginalized groups. Although his takes on anyone that's not white when it comes to like poor people is dog shit. And then Hassan is, I think, really, really good at history. Like that's, I think, his strongest component is like history and understanding like how history is applied directly to political science. And then I think that Destiny would be okay, even though I'm not watching his content right now. And I think a lot of people are, given the most recent like sexual scandal, most people are probably like, they're not blacklisting him, they're probably boycotting him temporarily. He was really good with the January 6th stuff because he was like actually going through the indictments, whereas other content creators weren't. But there's this, and even Dave Pacman is a little sensationalist. I don't like certain spins he puts on stuff, but he covers a really broad range of stuff. He would be like the progressive version of like a CNN host. But the person that I found that I really fucking appreciate, and I don't think she gets enough credit, is a chick named Brittany Page. Like I recently found her like within the last like week and a half or two, and I went through all of her stuff. She has like a master's of science in psychology. She does like drug rehabilitation programs. She works with at-risk youth. Like she's actually doing the real work, and then she'll, in her free time, she makes like political commentary videos. And I think she's a phenomenal breath of fresh air for progressivism. So if you were a left-leaning person, I would say go that route. If you're a right-leaning person, I have a bunch of recommendations for that as well, because I probably watch more right-leaning content than anything, and I want to fucking kill myself half the time as a result, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to be, we have to treat these people the same that we treat news organizations, because that's essentially the new front now.
Yeah.
This is the new way that a lot of people consume their information, especially their political news. You can't just read or listen to one. You have to diversify what you consume. Otherwise, you're going to be constrained to the biases and the lens of that specific individual. So I've listened to collections of all of them. I'll pick a specific topic of conversation, and then I'll go listen to how all of those different personalities that we named and mentioned will talk about it differently. But anyone would be doing themselves a disservice to just completely and blindly go into one of those communities and stay there without exposing yourself to what other people are saying. The other problem that I have with consuming your news and your takes primarily from those high-level influencers is that they basically do party politics within their communities. So now you have Destiny communities attacking Hassan communities and vice versa. Both of them have attacked Vosh, and Vosh communities have lashed back out to those. So you're getting all this extra bullshit that isn't necessary. So if you do watch their content, I would just be wary of joining or embedding yourself into the community aspect of it, because it becomes inherently toxic and counterintuitive to the point that they all supposedly care about.
That's true. And also, I think this is super, super, super relevant too. You got to remember that if you're watching YouTube as like entertainment, news and news media and political pundits are like infotainment, okay? And there's this specific oversight where a political commentator or an influencer on social media by federal law has to tell you that they're sponsored, okay? Like I'm sure you watch like gaming videos and they're like, oh, sponsored by Squarespace or whatever, okay? Or sponsored by this super awesome Vietnamese coffee brand, which I sent both of you today, right? So like something like that. However, there is no federal law that says if you're sponsored by a political like think tank or sponsored by like a political advocacy group that you have to tell your viewers that. Like Vosh, Xander Hall, at one time Destiny, and all of Destiny's orbiters at one time were all paid by this group called Progressive Victory. But never, ever, ever did they tell anyone that. Okay? I think that that's like super problematic, because like on the right-leaning side, you've got all kinds of conservative groups that are reaching out to these people, and that's why you'll notice that there's clear through talking points that every single side, whether it's right or left, has. So like the left will have like 3 core points that they harp on, and then they'll have their own spin on it and their own personality attached to it. And then the right leaning side will have 3 or 4 core talking points, and then they'll all have their own unique spin on it and their own personality, their own face attached to it. But it's still an industry. It's still corporate at the end of the day. So just keep that in mind too. And you have to like use discernment, I think is what we're telling you.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest lies being perpetrated right now in pop culture, social media, whatever it is that this new medium through which we talk about politics is an inherent and blanket improvement over traditional corporate media. Corporate media has plenty of vulnerabilities and problems. Those problems haven't been fixed by switching over to influencer-led culture. It's if anything, it's been exacerbated, in my opinion. And I know a lot of people disagree with me on that, because you could point to any obscure content creator and say that they're not bought, whereas everyone from a specific giant news organization is bought. I think journalism is relevant in written form as well, and I think journalism is under attack right now, traditional journalism. But knowing that people like Tim Pool and Ben Shapiro, Hassan, Destiny, they're all getting money from sources that we're not being made privy to, means that their information has to be put through all of the same skepticism that anything in quote unquote legacy media is right now.
Yeah. And also, if you're not getting paid from like a direct American source, it doesn't mean that you aren't allied, affiliated, or maybe you're getting paid in a roundabout way from an outside American source. Like, I don't think there's any reality where Hassan gets paid by Progressive Victory. I think he's some of his political positions are not in alignment with what they want. However, it wouldn't surprise me if he isn't getting like private donations on the back end from some other group that maybe cares about like Palestine, like a pro-Palestine. And you know, he tries to carry himself in a more ethical way, but we just don't know. We'll never know, especially since a lot of these content creators aren't they're not legally forced to display to put out what they own, or what donations they take, right? Any donations they make are public knowledge, I believe, but they don't have to disclose it. So I don't know. I think that Hassan is probably one of the least problematic ones for donations, but I mean, there's shit with his uncle right now. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even necessarily trying to say that he should be suspected of being
No,
disingenuous.
I know what you mean.
But it's just we can't take this new era of media consumption and not apply the same criticisms and skepticisms that we're being told to apply to legacy media. Like the reason that we're being sold this as a solution. And we've found several examples already of how it is literally indistinguishable from the corruption and the problems that are pervasive in legacy media. So to behave differently or to trust anything implicitly when it's trying to feed you an opinion on what's happening around the world, you got to be careful about that. Are the Young Turks no longer relevant? I wouldn't say that they're no longer relevant. In fact, I would argue the opposite. I would say that their relevancy is probably about to be as high as it has ever been, but in probably the wrong direction. Cenk, the, I guess, CEO or head or founder of the Young Turks, Hassan's uncle, has completely kissed the ring to the Trump administration, and he has extended olive branches to people like Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA. And the shift that he's trying to make, where he's trying to be this like new, I'm the number one centrist, and you guys are being overly harsh on Trump, but not all the time. And Democrats aren't willing to come to the table, but Republicans are. It's been one of the more disgusting and shameless displays that I've seen since the election. And I think you probably share the same idea. I think we've talked about it before.
I do. And that actually gives me an idea for a thumbnail that we do for next stream. If we start talking about like you say he's a centrist, and I hadn't really thought of it that way because he's a populist, right? But he is a centrist. So like, have you ever seen the movie The Thing?
Yeah.
One of the greatest horror movies of all time. I love it. If I were to put his head on like the Thing monster, because he's like this amalgamation of different parts and different beliefs, but none of it actually like works together. He's like a bastardization of these two different beliefs. It's so weird, but I agree with you, long and short.
He's trying to be like a worse Lex Friedman.
Yeah. I think that's really well put. He's a worse Lex Friedman.
Yeah, because Lex isn't like having to forcibly have some sort of gobbledygook opinion on everything that happens, but Cenk is insisting upon it because that's been his whole thing, is that he's been very animated, whereas Lex is more reserved and robotic. So when you become a centrist in an increasingly volatile environment, you're talking a lot. And I don't think he can stop himself. Like, I'm looking at his ex Twitter feeds or whatever, and he seems literally incapable of stopping himself from going too far. And he's gone too far on multiple occasions. And I think we have to watch stuff like that, because when you have giant media outlets show sudden shifts in the way that they interact with parties that they were overtly critical of just months prior, that's a red flag. That's a huge case for alarm, and I need more people to kind of see it that way.
Yeah, and it's super interesting that you use Lex Friedman as the kind of the grounding point there. I have criticisms of Lex Friedman, but Lex will actually offer, in some cases, really grounded pushback to something that's so overtly fucking nonsensical, right?
Yeah.
So I don't hear Cenk doing that. And Oreus, I don't know if you did yourself the disservice of watching this shit that I'm about to recommend to you. You'll probably sue me for therapy afterwards, but go watch it. It's the Amerifest, I think it was, where we talked about it last stream, where Cenk Uygur went to basically grovel at the feet of Mr. Tiny Face. What is his name? Charlie Kirk. And he was like doing the populism, but he's like, oh, but both sides are bad, and like we're actually, if we can get Trump to take care of populism, then everyone wins, right? And I'm your buddy, right? And like, trans people should have rights, right? And everyone's like, no. Everything up to that, no. And then he's like, oh, but gun rights, maybe we have like a little bit stricter gun laws, right? Like you can still have your guns, but no one needs to hunt with the AR-15, right? And they're like, we'll fucking kill you. It's really bad, dude. He's just prostrating himself for no reason. And you can tell they still view him as an ideological enemy, even though they like watching him flagellate himself or whatever it is. It's weird. And it's sad, and I said this before and I stand by this. Maybe you disagree with me, but I have respect for where Uyghur came from. I don't necessarily agree with his political views, but the fact that he was a pioneer at one time, the fact that he was an independent media at one time, the fact that he survived in one of the most tumultuous eras of like private media and corporate media, who actually did try to like destroy his company at one time. I have a lot of respect for just the come up, I guess. So
no, I do too.
It's just cringe to see how far he's fallen.
That's why I'm harping on, and make no mistake, he's not the only one that's fallen. If you've been following Anna Kasparian over the last couple months, she's completely lost. Like she had a complete crash out.
Well, it was after she got essayed by that homeless person, right? And then she said, I don't know what the real story is, but she tells it like when she brought it up about crime being a problem or homelessness being a problem, and she got sexually assaulted, she got attacked by the left, right? And
yeah, no, it's an unfortunate story, and I'm not trying to diminish the reality of how traumatizing that was for her, but it just basically, those two were sort of the pillars of that organization. I mean, Hassan departed years ago. His own uncle basically said, you can't be a part of my media company for some of the outlandish shit that you've said. Well, really just the one thing, but the fact that they've sort of both now had a lot of pressure applied to them, and it's sad, it's unfortunate, because I do agree with you that it is admirable what their original intentions and executions were, but that's why it's standing out more to me than other media outlets that are sort of doing the same thing, because I did hold them in a much higher regard, and it's unfortunate to see how much pressure is being applied to them and how they're responding to it.
Yeah. It's just weird though. This goes back again to the last stream. I'm glad that how much we like, even though we rant or whatever, and we're still trying to figure out like, I guess our pathway forward with this. At least we're tethering all these talking points and stuff together and the way we view things. We talked about how if you ideologically are grounded in a belief, just because people on your side attack you, that shouldn't change your fucking belief. You shouldn't go, oh, well, I got attacked by these people on my side because I criticized the homeless. I'm going to be a Republican now. Like, that's not how that works. You go, okay, well, that sucks. That's shitty, but it doesn't change my position. I still, care about, I don't know, social health care or whatever the fuck, like, she cares about. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You either didn't have that position to begin with before, or you didn't really understand what that position should have entailed, I feel like. Unless there's, like, another option I'm not thinking of.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like you said, it's what we discussed. If in the face of direct consequences is when your true beliefs and your morals and ethics are tested. If they're never tested against adversity, then they're not really something that we can prove that you actually hold dear and hold true and stand by, because you're not standing against anything. So if those things are challenged, and the second that they're challenged, you completely buckle those things, they're not things that you care about. Yeah. They were disposable from the beginning.
Yeah. So real quick, not to deviate too much, I actually like this change because we're talking with the chatter. So it's our first chatter. Do you want to?
By the way,
yes,
I wanted to give a shout out. Thank you for engaging with us. That's something that we really, really take seriously and really enjoy. So this has been a great first experience for us.
True. Thank you, Aris. We appreciate you. Do you want to finish the last two segments? Or I guess it would be the last segment now, because we talked about the freezing. Did you want to finish that, or do you want to save it for tonight? Because we're almost 3 hours.
Yeah, I'm going to have to save it for tonight, because I got to recharge my batteries a little bit.
That's fine.
One thing that I did want to mention, though, because the only reason I'm mentioning it is it's not topics that we were talking about covering, but it's breaking news that's been happening since we've been talking, because we've been talking for, like you said, almost 3 hours. I just posted a link to you in the chat. Not on the live stream, of course, but in our Discord chat that we talked through. Yeah. So
You want me to pull this up on screen?
not necessarily, but it just interestingly enough, I'm just gonna say what it is that I'm seeing. But
Okay.
on the travel.state.gov website, so the U.S. Department of State, they no longer refer to it as the LGBTQ community. They are LGB travelers now. So
That's so weird. Why?
because there is a legitimate war against transgender people going on. Like there is a concerted and targeted effort to eliminate them from reality. And the fact that you're now seeing it reflected in executive order and now being reflected without opposition on federal government websites. The other thing that I was going to mention, the reason that I wanted to send it to you now is because I saw some report that, and I'm going to try to verify it here real quick, but I just wanted to let people know this because, again, it's more time sensitive. There was a headline that I saw that Trump alluded to all government websites are going to get shut down at some point this week.
That's super weird.
And then be brought back up.
All right, real quick. Sorry, keep talking. I have to step away for one brief second, but keep talking in the chat. I'll be right back.
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out the exact specifics and I'm trying to validate it, but what was proposed was that, or reported was that all government websites could be shut down as early as tonight at some point within the next couple hours, and then they'll all of a sudden be brought back up. The reason that that's obviously concerning is because it seems as if they have a unified reason as to why they want to do that, and we don't really have any idea what that reason is right now. So I'm concerned that this travel.gov website is just the first domino to fall. And when you wake up tomorrow, federal government websites will have completely different rhetoric and terminology that reflects the awful executive decisions of this administration. So bear with me while I try to find it. Give me just a moment to kind of flip through the information because it's all kind of happening really quickly. Let me see here. Mm-hmm. Oh, also, it was executive order today that all federal employees are to remove their pronouns from their email signatures. So that's another reason why it's kind of lending credence to the fact that this is going to be a substantial change, and LGBTQ is no longer going to be the recognized designation by the American government, and that should ignite a direct response from the American public, is what I would imagine. Some people are going to say that that matters more than others because that's exactly what they do to minority groups, whether it be social, ethnic, or sexual minorities. That is the first way to destabilize any sort of solidarity. They're going to pick one specific target, and then because other targets have at least found that there's a group below them, so to speak, in the social hierarchy, they will pit them against each other, and it'll completely ruin any chance that we have of banding together going forward.
Well, that's funny because that goes right back to what we talked about in the very fucking beginning about COINTELPRO.
Yep.
And it all comes full circle.
Yeah. Well, you know me. I like to bring it all around. I'm a big circle guy.
Circle jerk?
Well, you know, maybe not, but...
Hey.
But yeah, so in tandem with the fact that he's like potentially talking about shutting down all the websites, they've already removed the TQ from at least one government website. There is an executive order signed today that, effective immediately, like due by 5 p.m. today, all pronouns had to be removed from federal employee email signatures. And I'm sorry, but if these things are as benign as they seem to most of us, this is a lot of energy to expend on something that is seemingly irrelevant in the grand scheme of things.
I agree.
Like one of the first things that they have focused on is immigrants, one, but arguably trans might even be of a higher focus right now. I have heard more about trans rights and legislation against trans people in the last week than I have in the last year. And I understand the difference is because well, now that he's actually in office, some of the things that he may have always wanted to do, he's going to bring to the forefront. But maybe it's just me. I didn't watch all of his speeches, but I don't remember him being so specifically targeted against trans people during the campaign.
It's just the culture war shit.
It is, but and it's also because even though he'll deny until the end of his days, he's propped up by a religious conservative movement that has deep pockets. And
which we'll talk about on the second one.
Yeah, and they believe in this, so that's why this has got to be first.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was sort of my leaving point. There's another just fucking horrifying announcement that came through while we were recording, and I'm gonna wait to address it because, like I said, I kind of need to recharge my batteries. But
yeah, I mean, I think this stream actually went better than the last one.
Yeah. But I'll just say it for, to preface it for the rest of it. The environment's getting fucked even harder than we thought, guys.
Okay.
Just pointing that out there. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, of course.
So, but Arias, don't stress. I mean, there's always something positive. If nothing else, I know that you have access to community, right? So, like this is someone that I've known for a while. So, there's always something positive. So, was there anything else you wanted to add before I wrap it up?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so for the sake of levity, right? Because we agreed last time, it's super important. I'm gonna get fucking YouTube to not snipe us. I'm gonna get this fucking video up, bro. So help me, bro.
We're just gonna keep making new versions and fast cuts of the same clip
100%.
as the week goes on. You're not gonna stop us. We're gonna keep going,
dude. Yes. All right. Even if I have to fucking remix the goddamn song, we're gonna get it up, bro. Pause. All right, let's try it this time. And if it doesn't work, I'll work on it and get it ready for the second stream. Let's see here. Give me 1 second. Let's turn off our chill music, the lo-fi music. Damn, I can't believe that we went 3 hours today so far. I'm impressed.
Yeah. And it feels like I could keep going. It's just
Same.
knowing that we're going to do a second one. I got it. I've got other stuff to do today. I've got to take a moment, got to take the dog out and everything. So
yeah. All right. Let's see here. There we go. Okay. I think it's gonna come through this time. This is what we're ending on, already. Strap in, bro. This is the most America you've ever fucking seen, bro.
I love that it just says the word slavery as it shines on Donald Trump's branded Sharpie for fucking executive orders. Like,
yeah, dude.
I could watch it probably for 3 hours straight. It's so perfectly appropriate.
so good, bro.
It's just perfect. So there's really nothing that better encapsulates it. I mean, Jesus Christ. Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah is right. Fuck yeah. All right. Well, that's our show for this morning. That ended up being a fucking.
That's our show for most of the day, and
Yeah.
then we'll take most of the night as well.
True. Well, I have to be done by like 10. So
Yeah.
we're gonna try and speed rush the second show.
Well, it's good because if we go over early, that means that we have less things that we feel we have to cover tonight. So
That's kind of like what I was thinking too.
yeah, kind of helps keep us in line there.
All right. Well, Orace, we hope to see you back tonight. Hopefully, we'll have some other chatters as well. So, everybody, take care, stay safe, be kind to each other. Okay. And then I'll let my co-host take us out.
Yeah, again, just find that little piece of light in dark times. I know that we spent almost 4 hours talking about how bleak everything is, but you just